Strongest Hulk in Multiverse. Chapter 1, Spacetime Tunnel. Fang Ye suddenly woke up and instinctively breathed in the oxygen in the air, looking around in bewilderment. He found himself not only wearing dry clothes but also inexplicably appearing at a crossroads where vehicles were passing by constantly. Skyscrapers surrounded him, but the most eye-catching one was a tall building in front. On the top floor of that building, the sign read Osborne Industries in English. Osborne Industries. Isn't that the company from the Spider-Man movie? In his previous memory, Fang Ye was on a voyage to the Bermuda Triangle, where everything was calm and peaceful. However, as the ship entered the deep waters of the Bermuda area, the serene sea suddenly turned into violent storms. The ship couldn't bear the weight of the giant waves and capsized, and dozens of millionaires and adventurers from all over the world lost their lives in the area. Fang Ye thought he would meet his end, but unexpectedly, he saw a cluster of light at the bottom of the sea. The cluster was shrouded in mist and had a distorted space. He could even see scenes of time rewinding, like a vortex existing in a dimensional space. After his body made contact with the cluster of light, Fang Ye lost consciousness. When he woke up, he found himself at the crossroads. "Hey, buddy, where do you want to go?" "Thanks, I don't need a taxi." The taxi driver's inquiry snapped Fang Ye out of his shock, and his fluent English surprised the driver. After declining the taxi driver's offer, Fang Ye sat on a stone chair by the street, lost in thought. For centuries, ships and planes had disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle, and no one knew what force was behind it. People referred to that area as the Forbidden Zone for humanity. As one incident followed another, the area earned names like the Devil's Triangle, the Sea of Misfortune, the Demon Sea, and the Graveyard of Ships. These names only added to the mysterious and terrifying atmosphere of the Bermuda Triangle. In the 21st century, the Bermuda Triangle became synonymous with various mysterious and unexplainable disappearances. But for adventurers from all over the world, the Bermuda Triangle was a holy land of adventure. Fang Ye was not only one of China's most outstanding financial geniuses but also a world-famous adventurer. While he had already reached the pinnacle in the world of finance, he found himself more interested in adventure. Not long ago, Fang Ye, along with several other world-renowned adventurers, sent out invitations to explore the Bermuda Triangle to adventurers from all over the world. However, not everyone dared to venture into the Bermuda Triangle, and some couldn't free themselves to participate. In the end, out of hundreds of invitations sent, only 21 people agreed to join the expedition. Birds of a feather flock together. The 21 people were all elite individuals, whether as outstanding scientists, famous entrepreneurs, or financial geniuses like Fang Ye. They were all prominent figures in their respective fields. Unfortunately, apart from Fang Ye, who came here mysteriously through the encounter with the cluster of light, the other 24 people are now at the bottom of the sea. First, I need to find out where I am and then figure out a way to go back home. Fang Ye had lost his passport, wallet, ID, and other belongings, making it quite troublesome to return home. After gathering information from various sources, he came to a shocking realization that this place was no longer his original Earth. Originally, Fang Ye was puzzled because, as a financial genius in China, he had an impression of various corporate groups worldwide. However, he had never heard of Osborne Industries before. And now, to find out that he was in the Marvel Universe, Fang Ye felt relieved yet uneasy. Why uneasy? Because the Marvel Universe was too dangerous? In this world, superheroes and supervillains were everywhere. The person who passed by you just a moment ago might be a mutant with enough power to kill you instantly, or gods and aliens might descend upon Earth from time to time. In such an environment where even life was not guaranteed, how could Fang Ye be happy? Regarding the mysterious cluster of light underwater, Fang Ye speculated that it might be a spacetime tunnel. Actually, whether it was a spacetime tunnel or not, Fang Ye didn't care. What concerned him was the fact that the Bermuda Triangle did not exist in this Marvel world. This frustrated Fang Ye and shattered his hope of returning home. After learning that the Bermuda Triangle didn't exist in this world, Fang Ye's first thought was about the Cosmic Cube, or the Infinity Stones as they were known here. In the Marvel Universe, there were 6 Infinity Stones, each possessing mysterious and immeasurable power. They represented time, space, reality, mind, power, and soul. The Cosmic Cube represented space. Perhaps, if he could gather the Infinity Stones representing space and time, Fang Ye might have a chance to return to the real world. In the real world, Fang Ye had too many concerns. His wife, parents, and so many other things he couldn't let go of were there. But as he was now, with his current identity and power, it was almost impossible for him to get close to the Cosmic Cube. So, what he needed to do now was to increase his strength and build his influence. It seems that there are several ways to enhance one's power in the Marvel Universe. Fang Ye had watched many Marvel movies when he was bored. With his foresight and talent, he could make a fortune in the stock market in the shortest possible time. However, he couldn't help but wryly smile at the moment. Even though he was a financial genius, he was now penniless, and it seemed impossible for him to go to Osborne Industries to steal the Green Goblin serum. First and foremost, I need to find a way to raise some starting capital. Chapter 2, Norman Osborne. Sitting on the stone chair, Fang Ye propped his hands behind his head. He sometimes frowned, contemplating how to obtain his first pot of gold. In this unfamiliar world, Fang Ye was an undocumented black market worker. Unlike in the real world, where he was a world-renowned financial investor, he had no fame here. Trying to get investments from those wealthy individuals would be an impossible task. If Fang Ye had the same fame he had in the real world, countless wealthy individuals would rush to give him money at his request. Sighing inwardly, Fang Ye looked around and suddenly a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. At the entrance of Osborne Industries, escorted by several black-clad bodyguards, a dignified middle-aged man strolled out. The moment Fang Ye saw him, his eyes lit up. Norman Osborne. Fang Ye mumbled to himself. The middle-aged man was none other than the current director of Osborne Industries, and he would later become the Green Goblin, Norman Osborne. The Green Goblin was the arch-nemesis of Spider-Man. His real name was Norman Osborne, and he was the chairman of Osborne Industries and the father of Harry Osborne, who was Spider-Man's close friend. Norman Osborne used a human-enhancing drug developed by his own company to gain superhuman abilities and high intelligence. However, the drug also caused a terrifying alter ego within him, a personality that only sought destruction and criminal activities. Under the influence of this alter ego, Norman Osborne used his vast wealth to create various high-tech equipment, becoming the Green Goblin and repeatedly clashing with Spider-Man and the Avengers. Fang Ye didn't have any negative feelings towards Norman Osborne. In fact, he admired him to some extent. This was because Norman Osborne's father had made a mistake in a policy, leading to a severe decline in the company's competitiveness. Later, Norman Osborne took over Osborne Industries and supported it wholeheartedly. Fang Ye admired his determination to do everything for Osborne Industries. Norman Osborne had poured his heart and soul into the company, but in the end, he had to watch the family business being taken over by those capitalists. Even Fang Ye, if put in the same situation, would probably turn into the Green Goblin and annihilate anyone who dared to threaten Osborne Industries. But, of course, Fang Ye would not resort to violence like Norman Osborne did. Norman was a smart man, and if not for the influence of his alter ego, he might not act so recklessly. As for why Fang Ye knew Norman Osborne, it was because Norman Osborne's appearance was very similar to the one in the Spider-Man movies. Upon seeing Norman Osborne, Fang Ye's face revealed a confident smile. He stood up, adjusted his clothes, and walked towards Norman Osborne with a relaxed demeanor. "Stop right there." As Fang Ye approached, the bodyguards around Norman Osborne immediately became alert. Their right hands instinctively reached for their waist, and they sternly warned Fang Ye. The bodyguards were highly trained and efficient. It was not surprising, though, as being the chairman of Osborne Industries, Norman Osborne would only employ the best. Fang Ye maintained his smile and ignored the warning of the black bodyguard. However, he slowed down his pace, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "This gentleman, it seems like you have something to discuss with me." Norman Osborne noticed Fang Ye. Normally, he wouldn't bother acknowledging someone like Fang Ye, a small fry. As a well-known entrepreneur in the United States, with close cooperation with the military, Norman Osborne naturally carried an air of pride. The friendly and affable persona he showed on television was only an act for the general public. If you were naive enough to think that these top entrepreneurs were easy to talk to, you were mistaken. Norman Osborne had initially planned to ignore Fang Ye, but seeing the confident smile on his face, he changed his mind. That kind of confidence and pride that emanated from Fang Ye couldn't be faked. Norman Osborne felt a strange familiarity with that smile, as he often had the same expression on his face. "Well, hello, Mr. Osborne. It's an honor to meet you. I hope you don't mind giving me 5 minutes of your time," Fang Ye said as he smiled and extended his right hand in a friendly greeting. Norman Osborne looked Fang Ye up and down, then smiled and shook his hand. Their first meeting seemed to be relatively pleasant. "How can I help you?" Norman asked. "I need some money, Mr. Osborne," Fang Ye said directly, not trying to hide his intentions. He needed a sum of money to kickstart his plans. Norman Osborne was a smart man, and he quickly deduced that Fang Ye had a request. Fang Ye didn't try to hide it, he straightforwardly stated that he needed money. Fang Ye's frankness didn't make Norman Osborne dislike him. On the contrary, it improved his impression of Fang Ye. However, a good impression was not enough for Norman Osborne to give money to someone just like that. Fang Ye had explained his reasons, but now came the critical point, convincing Norman that he could deliver on his promise. "Do you know what you're saying?" Norman Osborne smiled, re-evaluating Fang Ye. However, the warmth in his smile had diminished. Fang Ye naturally understood Norman Osborne's thoughts, but he didn't bother explaining. After all, His words were hard to believe, and to make others believe, he had to back it up with results. In a bold and cunning move, the Fang Ye skillfully exploits Norman Osborne's insatiable desire for profit and challenges him to a high-stakes bet. Mr. Osborne, I know what I'm saying, and I will be responsible for my words. So, I'd like to make a bet with you, Mr. Osborne. I suppose you wouldn't mind sparing $100,000. Fang Ye's tone was firm, and his words carried a hint of coercion. With charisma and a shrewd understanding of human psychology, Fang Ye presents a compelling proposal to Norman. By tapping into Norman's ego and thirst for greater wealth, Fang Ye promises to multiply the initial $100,000 investment into hundredfolds within a month. Intrigued by the prospect of amassing even more riches, Norman can't resist the opportunity to prove his dominance and accepts the challenge. Haha. Norman Osborne laughed. Good. I'm interested in this wager. I'll give you $100,000, and a month later, you only need to return me $1 million. I hope you don't disappoint me. Of course. I won't let you down, Mr. Osborne. Also, I said it would be 100 times the profit. After 1 month, I will send $10 million to Osborne Industries. Taking the check handed over by Norman Osborne, Fang Ye smiled calmly. He had his pride, and though he might not be a good person, he was true to his word. His words were as good as gold. I look forward to the coming month. Norman Osborne patted Fang Ye's shoulder and got into the car under the escort of the bodyguards. Watching Norman Osborne leave, Fang Ye's smile slowly faded. Norman Osborne hadn't mentioned the consequences of deceiving him, but Fang Ye knew that he had no room to offend Norman Osborne now. If he couldn't produce $10 million in a month, he would have no place to stand in the United States against Norman Osborne's formidable influence. With Osborne Industries' immense power, dealing with an insignificant figure like Fang Ye would be as easy as an elephant crushing an ant. Norman Osborne didn't need to threaten him verbally, and as the person he was now, he didn't have the status or strength to oppose Norman Osborne. Having received $100,000, the next step should be to find a place to have a good time. Looking at the check in his hand, Fang Ye couldn't help but smile. His first priority was to address the issue of his identity, and with this $100,000, that problem could be solved more easily. Chapter 3, Power of Premonition. St. Regis Hotel, in a standard suite. Fang Ye lay on the sofa, a faint smile on his lips, gently swirling a glass of red wine in his hand. This was Fang Ye's third day in this world. During these 3 days, he not only resolved the issue of his identity but also spent 2 days investigating the stock market trends. In the real world, Fang Ye was known as a financial genius, a title he didn't boast about himself but earned through his formidable track record and terrifying speed of accumulating wealth, gaining recognition from financial professionals worldwide. There were many ways to make money in the financial industry, but Fang Ye's expertise lay in foreign exchange, gold, and stocks. Originally, Fang Ye planned to accumulate wealth as quickly as possible, and naturally, his first choice would be trading gold. Unfortunately, his current funds were too limited. With a mere $80,000, it was a joke to try to trade gold and amass wealth in a short period. As for the remaining $20,000, aside from keeping some for daily expenses, he used the rest to apply for a social security card. In the United States, there was no national ID card, and social security cards served as identification for U.S. citizens. The commonly used identification for daily purposes was the driver's license, with each state having its own unique design. Under Fang Ye's aggressive approach, within 2 days, all the necessary documents were successfully processed. It seems that I can only choose stocks for the short term. As for foreign exchange and gold, I'll have to wait until I accumulate enough capital. Fang Ye mused and set his target. It wasn't that stock trading couldn't be profitable, it was just that compared to foreign exchange and gold, stock trading was slower in generating profits. Merely relying on stock trading, it was impossible to make more than 100-fold profit within a month. Regrettably, due to the limited funds, Fang Ye had no other choice but to take it one step at a time and gradually accumulate wealth. The reason Fang Ye favored gold trading was because of the financial crisis a few years ago, which had a significant impact on the U.S. economy. After the U.S. government launched a $30 trillion economic stimulus plan last year, the stock market began to rebound, and gold soared at a terrifying speed. Fang Ye believed that short-term accumulation of wealth would be best achieved through trading gold. In reality, stock trading wasn't that miraculous. Generally, anyone with some knowledge of the stock market, as long as they had money, could engage in stock trading. With a good eye and some luck, a few 100,000 could turn into several million, and several million could become tens of millions. It was not a legendary story. In a bull market, profits could even multiply dozens of times. However, most people lost money because they didn't exit in time. After the stock market fell, not only did they lose their profits, but they also lost a significant portion of their capital, or even their entire investment. In fact, Fang Ye had a secret that nobody knew. He possessed an extraordinary ability, which allowed him to become a world-renowned financial genius in the real world. This superpower played a crucial role. He called this superpower the power of premonition. Regardless of the stock Fang Ye bought, once the stock market was about to decline, he would have a premonition. This was the fundamental reason why Fang Ye never got trapped and never suffered losses. But this power of premonition wasn't limited to the stock market. Whenever something bad was about to happen, Fang Ye would have a premonition. Before the Bermuda shipwreck, Fang Ye also had a vague premonition, but at that time, he was in the open sea. What could he do? Should he jump into the water to try and survive? That might lead to an even faster death. Fang Ye's power of premonition was quite similar to Wolverine's sensing ability among the X-Men. They both had a mysterious sense of danger. However, compared to Wolverine's sensing ability, Fang Ye's power of premonition was more comprehensive. Whenever something bad was about to happen to him, Fang Ye would have a sense of premonition. This ability might seem useless, but it was, in fact, terrifying. If used properly, it could sometimes play a decisive role. Fang Ye had a decisive and resolute character, and he never procrastinated on decisions. If something could be completed today, he would never put it off until tomorrow. Sitting at the computer desk, Fang Ye opened his securities account that he had applied for yesterday. Fang Ye's first target was already chosen. He went directly for 200 long contracts, each containing 100 ounces of gold. In other words, for every $1 drop in the stock price, Fang Ye would lose $20,000. Fang Ye's account leverage was 10 times, and the margin for 100 long contracts was less than $30,000, well within his tolerance range, and the risk was not significant. Moreover, Fang Ye never considered that he would lose money. As long as the stock market was about to decline, his power of premonition would sound the alarm. As long as he sold and closed his positions in a timely manner, it wouldn't affect him in any way. The only difference would be whether he earned more or earned less. With nothing else to do, Fang Ye started playing Twitter, a popular platform in the United States, similar to China's Weibo. But Twitter was much more influential. It was one of the top 10 most visited websites in the world. Fang Ye wasn't playing Twitter out of boredom, he used it to rapidly increase his popularity. What did a financial investor need most? It wasn't how much money he had, but his reputation. As long as you had a reputation, money wouldn't be a problem. Just like the real-world Fang Ye, at the peak of his fame, he only needed to open his mouth, and countless wealthy individuals would scramble to give him money, and they even feared he wouldn't accept it. Twitter was undoubtedly the best platform currently available, a platform that could boost Fang Ye's popularity in a short period. 2 days passed quickly. During this time, Fang Ye didn't go out but stayed in the hotel trading stocks, reading books, and swimming. From time to time, he posted several stock analysis data on Twitter. However, due to his lack of fame, so far, only a few hundred people had followed him. The King of Finance, this was the nickname Fang Ye chose for himself. After Fang Ye posted some of his analyzed stock data on Twitter and verified one by one, he believed that his fame would soon increase. At that time, more and more people would follow him. On the third day, Fang Ye faintly felt that the stock he had just purchased was about to fall. Fang Ye never doubted his premonition, and from the stock price trend, it indeed had the potential for a rebound. Without hesitation, Fang Ye closed his position after holding the stock for an hour. He earned a net profit of $320,000 with 200 long contracts. His account balance reached $400,000. Then Fang Ye immediately went all in on another stock, buying 500 contracts, worth $400,000, with a tenfold leverage. Fang Ye had invested all his funds, but he wasn't afraid of getting stuck, thanks to his power of premonition. Of course, stock market analysis was still necessary. His premonition couldn't help with determining which stocks would rise in the short term, he had to rely on his own analysis. Although Fang Ye didn't dare to claim that he was better than those financial tycoons, he wasn't too far behind. In finance, Fang Ye did have a remarkable talent. Otherwise, even with the assistance of his premonition power, he wouldn't have become the financial genius acknowledged in the financial industry. Indeed, after Fang Ye closed all positions an hour ago, the stock he bought dropped by 20%. Numerous people lost the money they had earned in recent days, and some even lost all their capital. That was the stock market. It could be heaven or hell. Perhaps you were a millionaire one moment, but the next, you might have nothing. Fang Ye took a screenshot of the floating profit and posted it on Twitter, saying, "Net profit of $320,000 in 3 days. Next goal, make $2 million in 3 days." After Fang Ye posted the screenshot on Twitter, it caused a huge sensation. The number of people following him surpassed 10,000 within a day. Fang Ye smiled calmly at this, once again posting some of his analyzed data on Twitter. He believed that as long as he made a few more big trades, his fame would skyrocket. Chapter 4, Rising Fame on Wall Street. In fact, the people following Fang Ye's Twitter account were not just ordinary retail investors. Many Wall Street financial professionals were also keeping an eye on his updates. There are mainly two reasons for this. First, the data Fang Ye posted caused a huge shock in the Wall Street financial circles. Those data analyses were exceptionally insightful and not something an average person could come up with. It required not only extensive experience but also a keen sense of the market. Such acute perception was a talent, something that could not be acquired through effort alone. Otherwise, why were there only a few financial giants in the world? It was because talent couldn't be replicated. Each financial giant had an astonishingly keen sense of the market. Fang Ye possessed this talent, which was the reason he was known as a financial genius in the real world, and not just because of his power of premonition. Second, Fang Ye's arrogance had rubbed many Wall Street professionals the wrong way. To them, making 5 times the profit in just 3 days was nothing short of reckless and ignorant, especially when they discovered that Fang Ye was a Chinese American. Perhaps due to jealousy or reluctance to see a Chinese person standing above them, many Wall Street professionals mocked him. Making 5 times the profit in 3 days? That's pure fantasy. Do all Chinese people act this arrogantly? The king of finance? Daring to call himself that? I wonder if he's got the skills to back it up. Wall Street doesn't need someone like him. Many well-known figures in Wall Street took to Twitter to smear Fang Ye. As more and more people paid attention to the situation, especially with the criticism from hundreds of financial professionals, Fang Ye's Twitter account quickly became popular. Within a few hours, the number of followers on Fang Ye's Twitter account surged by over 30,000. Among them, there were also many supporters of Fang Ye. These people had read his analyzed data and managed to clear their positions ahead of time, avoiding getting stuck. They were extremely grateful to Fang Ye and naturally stood up for him when they saw others smearing him. Unfortunately, there were too few people supporting Fang Ye, and they were no match for those who were against him. In no time, they were overwhelmed. The situation escalated on the internet, and Fang Ye's Twitter account became even more popular. Fang Ye didn't bother to clarify or pay attention to those who smeared him. He let the facts speak for themselves. Late at night, Fang Ye took a screenshot of his clear position and posted it on Twitter. Today, I made 500 long contracts and earned a net profit of $250,000. After posting the screenshot on Twitter, the Wall Street professionals fell silent, and Fang Ye's supporters gained the upper hand. However, they were still waiting for Fang Ye to make a mistake. The stock market was ever-changing, and once they got stuck, it would be a fall from heaven to hell. Unfortunately for them, Fang Ye didn't give them a chance to turn the tide. On the second and third days, he continued to make explosive gains, earning $550,000 and $950,000, respectively, in net profits. Added to his initial capital of $400,000, he now had a total of $2 million. Fang Ye had indeed achieved his goal of turning $40,000 into $2 million in just 3 days. Haha, the king didn't disappoint us. Those Wall Street people can go eat dirt. King, we support you. I followed the king and bought 200 shares, making over $300,000 in a few days. I'm so grateful to the king. I knew I shouldn't have trusted those fools on Wall Street. Most of those who supported and believed in Fang Ye had made some profits in the past 3 days of following him. As for those who didn't believe in Fang Ye and even smeared him, they were now filled with regret. They watched as others made money, while they themselves had been losing for the past few days. They couldn't help but resent those Wall Street fools. With $2 million in his account, Fang Ye decided to stop trading stocks. Half of the time agreed upon with Norman Osborne had already passed. In the remaining half-month, Fang Ye was confident that he could turn his $2 million into over $10 million. After making money, Fang Ye had changed his room, no longer settling for a standard suite but opting for the presidential suite instead. In Fang Ye's view, the purpose of making money was to enjoy life better. There was no point in earning money just to live a frugal life. Sitting in front of the computer, Fang Ye analyzed the data he had collected over the past few days. Gold dropped by 1 point yesterday, but it has rebounded now. Currently, it's more suitable to go long than short. Fang Ye had made up his mind. He opened his account and hesitated for no longer, investing his entire $2 million. He placed over 2,000 long contracts with a leverage of nearly 20 times. The next morning, gold rose by 2 points. In just one night, Fang Ye's account saw a significant increase in funds. 5 days passed, with gold fluctuating up and down, but Fang Ye was still making profits, although not as rapidly as before. On the 7th day, Fang Ye had a sudden impulse. He got up from the sofa and quickly closed all his long positions. Not long after Fang Ye cleared his positions, gold began to decline again, and it seemed unlikely to rise again in the short term. At present, Fang Ye's account had a profit of over $12 million. He was no longer worried about losing the bet, meaning he had managed to turn his $80,000 into $12 million in just 22 days. A 150 times increase in 22 days would undoubtedly shock the financial world. Even the financial giants on Wall Street would be astonished if they heard this news. Fang Ye looked at his account balance, and a smile appeared on his face. He quickly took a screenshot and posted it on Twitter, turned $80,000 into $12 million in 22 days, a 150 times profit. After Fang Ye posted the screenshot, the financial world was shaken, and Wall Street fell silent. Fang Ye didn't stop there, he immediately opened short positions. He used all of his $12 million, creating 10,000 short contracts with a 30-fold leverage. However, Fang Ye no longer went long, he was now going short. There was only about a week left until his bet with Norman Osborne, and Fang Ye was confident that he could multiply his $12 million by 10 times within a week. The gold market traded trillions of dollars daily, and Fang Ye's capital was insignificant in comparison. He wasn't worried about causing a market rebound. What Fang Ye didn't know was that while he was manipulating stocks in his hotel room, the outside world had been turned upside down because of him. Not only on the internet, but the next morning, major American newspapers were also reporting on the matter. Chinese-American financial king appears, earns 150 times in 22 days. Chinese-American financial genius, turns $80,000 into $12 million in 22 days. Achieving 150 times profit in 22 days, can this myth be replicated? Undoubtedly the king of finance. The American financial world was shaken, and countless investors were speechless. Even the Americans, who were used to Wall Street myths, found it hard to believe. At the same time, countless reporters were searching for Fang Ye, but he stayed inside his hotel and never went out. Chapter 5, Establishing the Fund. Norman Osborne's industrial building, top floor director's office. Norman Osborne sat on the sofa, with a cup of coffee on the glass table in front of him. A beautiful secretary stood silently by his side, waiting for Norman Osborne's orders. As Norman Osborne read through a newspaper, he couldn't help but smile when he saw the headline 150 times profit in 20 days. It seems I underestimated him. I didn't expect him to really do it. Earning 150 times profit in 22 days was an impossible task, but Fang Ye had created a miracle? Indeed, it was a miracle. Even the most exceptional financial investors couldn't guarantee that they could replicate such a myth. Making money in the stock market was fast, but the stock market was ever-changing, just like gambling. No one could guarantee a continuous winning streak. Norman Osborne had to admit that he had indeed misjudged Fang Ye. At this moment, he couldn't help but look at Fang Ye with a new perspective. He even thought about hiring Fang Ye for Osborne Industries. There's still a week left until the deadline of the bet. Fang, I'm looking forward to meeting you again. Norman Osborne smiled faintly and casually put the newspaper on the table. He picked up the coffee and took a sip, but suddenly remembered something. He smiled and turned to the beautiful secretary by his side. Angel, keep an eye on his movements for me. Yes, Chairman. Stark Tower, one of New York's iconic buildings. In the luxurious office on the top floor, Tony Stark was reading the newspaper. However, his expression became somewhat strange when he saw the headline on the newspaper. This guy is interesting. He actually stole my headline. Tony Stark was a renowned genius scientist, an undeniable fact. But at the same time, he was also a well-known playboy. Making headlines in the newspapers was a common occurrence for him. However, when Tony woke up this morning and habitually read the newspaper, he found that someone had taken his headline. JARVIS, find out about this guy for me. Okay, sir. Sir, his name is Fang Ye. He became a Chinese-American citizen half a month ago in New York. Introduced by the intelligent butler JARVIS, Tony Stark furrowed his brows. JARVIS couldn't find any past information about Fang Ye. It was as if Fang Ye had appeared out of thin air in New York half a month ago. Moreover, not only did the United States have no information about Fang Ye, it seemed that there was no such person even in China. Interesting. Could he be from S.H.I.E.L.D? Only S.H.I.E.L.D has the capability to erase someone's past like this. I wonder what S.H.I.E.L.D is up to. Tony Stark chuckled lightly. No matter what S.H.I.E.L.D was up to, it was none of his business. As long as S.H.I.E.L.D didn't come to trouble him. In fact, not only Norman and Tony but many others were also paying attention to Fang Ye. Many entrepreneurs who had never heard of Fang Ye's name before now remembered this previously unknown name. At the same time, Jim Rogers, a famous financial giant on Wall Street, gave a highly commendable evaluation of Fang Ye during an interview with reporters. He even extended an invitation for Fang Ye to join his fund. He is a crazy financial genius. God loves him too much. Not only does he have an extremely keen sense of the market, but he also possesses unique analytical abilities. His achievement of making 150 times profit in 22 days is an unrepeatable myth. I hereby sincerely invite Fang to consider joining my foundation. Jim Rogers was a prominent figure on Wall Street, renowned as one of the most visionary international investors and one of the most successful practitioners in the American securities industry. After Jim Rogers' endorsement, Fang Ye's name truly became popular. In the financial world, Fang Ye was now a household name. As for those who had smeared Fang Ye in the past, they either disappeared from the internet or started praising him now. It was as if those who had smeared Fang Ye were completely different people. 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. After 5 days of shorting gold, Fang Ye cleared his positions on the 5th night. At present, his account had accumulated $85 million, making it his first fortune in this world. With this $85 million, Fang Ye could establish a fund, which would be the starting point for him to establish himself in this world. Fang Ye had already decided on the name of the fund, which he borrowed from the name of the foundation he established in the real world, the UEI Fund. UEI was Lu Yuei, the name of Fang Ye's wife in the real world. They had known each other since childhood, and she was the woman Fang Ye loved the most in his life. Although Fang Ye had his dalliances outside, there was no doubt that she was the woman he loved the most, or rather, the only woman he deeply loved. In addition, when Fang Ye went on his expedition to Bermuda, Lu Yuei was already 3 months pregnant. The reason Fang Ye was so determined to go back was not only for his parents and Lu Yuei but also to see his unborn child. Now that Fang Ye had completed the first step, the next step was to establish the fund, expand his name and influence, and attract wealthy investors from all over the world. Attracting wealthy investors from all over the world was not just for money, it was also a means to accumulate contacts. If more than 5% of the world's wealthy people stood behind Fang Ye, anyone who wanted to mess with him would have to think twice, even the US government. Just like Tony Stark, his Iron Man armor was something the US government wanted badly, but the formidable power represented by Stark Industries made the US government think twice and not dare to move forcefully. If an ordinary person had invented the Iron Man armor, the US government would have taken it over a long time ago. This was the difference between having influence and not having influence. After clearing his positions, Fang Ye took another screenshot and posted it on Twitter. Net profit of $70 million in 5 days, announcing the establishment of UEI Fund, welcoming wealthy investors from all over the world to invest. In the information, Fang Ye also released some rules of the foundation, which were entirely copied from the real-world UEI Fund's rules. Now that Fang Ye was also a public figure, the news spread rapidly as soon as it was released. Thousands of people instantly reposted the information. After finishing all this, Fang Ye prepared to rest. There were still 2 days left until the deadline of the bet, and he didn't plan to enter the market during these 2 days. Instead, he wanted to handle the affairs of UEI Fund. The next morning, major newspapers reported on the establishment of Fang Ye's fund. Explosive financial genius establishes UEI Fund. Chinese-American financial genius establishes UEI Fund, inviting wealthy investors from all over the world to invest. Has the financial genius overstated his achievements? Is he too hasty for immediate success? P.S. I'm randomly writing about stock trading. Please don't take it seriously. The next chapter will officially enter the plot. I'll try to avoid writing about the stock market as much as possible since I don't understand it, so as not to make mistakes. Chapter 6, I won the bet. Due to staying up late last night, it was already 10 in the morning when Fang Ye woke up, still enjoying his lazy sleep. However, just as Fang Ye was sleeping comfortably, he was awakened by the sudden sound of his phone ringing. In a daze, he pressed the answer button, and an excited voice came through the phone. Mr. Fang, I have good news for you. After our company's strong persuasion, everyone has accepted your job offer, except for Ms. Doris who declined. Being woken up would irritate anyone, and Fang Ye wasn't interested in listening to a long speech. He impatiently replied, tell them to gather at the intersection of Wall Street at noon. As you wish, sir. Even though Fang Ye's tone wasn't good, the other person wasn't angry. In the money-centric country like the United States, money was God. After hanging up the phone, Fang Ye casually tossed it aside. He had planned to sleep a bit more, but now that he was awake, he couldn't find the sleepiness again. Helpless, he lay on the bed for a while before getting up. Fang Ye wasn't surprised that those people had accepted his job offer. After all, the salary he offered was twice what they were earning before. Only a fool would not know how to choose. Of course, there were exceptions, like the lady named Doris, who refused Fang Ye's invitation for some reason. After taking a shower and changing into fresh clothes, Fang Ye packed his things and checked out of the hotel. At noon, he took a taxi to Wall Street. He was already familiar with Wall Street. He had been here many times in the real world. On both sides of Wall Street stood towering skyscrapers, and the streets resembled canyons. Looking up, all you could see was a narrow strip of sky. Countless large banks, trust companies, insurance companies, and exchanges were stationed here, and thousands of white-collar workers flocked here to work every day. It could be said that Wall Street was the financial center of the United States, and the famous New York Stock Exchange was also located here. The term Wall Street had now surpassed the street itself and become synonymous with the surrounding area. It referred to the entire influential financial market and financial institutions of the United States. Fang Ye chose to establish the headquarters of his fund here in Wall Street. Boss. When Fang Ye arrived at the intersection of Wall Street, more than 10 people respectfully greeted him. Fang Ye looked them up and down. Although he had seen their photos before, it was the first time he had met them in person. These people were the talents recruited by the headhunting company on Fang Ye's behalf. Among the 14 people, 4 were women, and the rest were middle-aged men, with about 1/3 of them being African Americans. Fang Ye smiled slightly and nodded to them, acknowledging their greetings. Boss, let me do it. Among the crowd, a black man with a keen eye stepped forward and greeted Fang Ye with a smile, taking the luggage from Fang Ye's hand. Fang Ye didn't bother to be polite with him and just nodded in acknowledgement, not saying any words of thanks. Several people saw the black man's action, and their faces didn't look good because they had also intended to help carry the luggage, but they didn't expect the black man to be one step ahead, and now they regretted it. Fang Ye noticed their expressions but didn't say anything. He made a rough judgment of their temperaments in his heart. Do you all know my situation? Fang Ye asked. Yes. When Fang Ye recruited people through the headhunting company, he naturally had to provide some of his own information. The people had also seen those materials, so they felt both familiar and unfamiliar with Fang Ye. Familiar because who in the financial world hadn't heard of Fang Ye's name? Unfamiliar because they were meeting him for the first time, which was very normal. In addition, they accepted Fang Ye's job offer so readily because of Fang Ye's reputation. They believed that this man who created miracles would lead them to overturn their lives. I won't talk nonsense. Since you have chosen me, I won't let you down. Now, let's go to Wall Street and choose a headquarters for U.E.I. Fund. Yes. Wall Street was valuable real estate, but under the assault of money, it only took 2 hours for Fang Ye to find a suitable location. The office was on the 13th floor, covering an area of 500 square meters. The entire U.E.I. Fund, including Fang Ye, only had 15 people, and the 500 square meters of space was more than enough. The most important thing was that it was very close to the New York Stock Exchange, making it convenient for future work. As for future expansion, if U.E.I. Fund needed more space, they could rent additional offices at that time. However, if they had surplus funds in the future, Fang Ye didn't plan to rent more offices. Instead, he intended to build his own U.E.I. building, just like the Osborne Industrial Building or the Stark Tower. Fang Ye wanted the U.E.I. building to become one of the iconic buildings in Wall Street or even New York. With the location chosen, the rest of the matters naturally didn't need Fang Ye to worry about. He sat on the sofa, thought for a moment, and then called for his temporary secretary. Jennifer, arrange it for me. I want to make an appointment with Norman Osborne, the chairman of Osborne Industries. Okay, boss. Jennifer was a well-known analyst on Wall Street. Since Fang Ye didn't have a secretary at the moment, she was temporarily brought in to fill the position. However, to Fang Ye's surprise, Jennifer not only looked very good, but she also handled things in an orderly manner. She did the secretary's job very well. Why did Fang Ye say very well instead of perfectly? That was because Jennifer hadn't done one thing a secretary should do. Boss, Mr. Osborne will be available to meet you tonight. All right, you go about your business. Fang Ye spread the news of meeting Norman Osborne intentionally through Jennifer, and soon all the other employees of U.E.I. Fund learned about it. Upon hearing that Fang Ye was meeting Norman Osborne, their gazes towards Fang Ye changed, becoming more respectful and admiring. The reputation of Osborne Industries in the United States was unimaginable. It was a true world-class industrial conglomerate. Among all the companies in New York that could compare their strength to Osborne Industries, there were no more than 5, and among the companies that could match Osborne Industries in terms of reputation, there was only Stark Industries. Fang Ye noticed Jennifer's actions, of course. He was even more satisfied with her. She was someone he could trust, someone who could consider things for him. Fang Ye had already decided to keep Jennifer as his secretary in the future. In the evening, Jennifer drove a Rolls-Royce and took Fang Ye to Osborne Industries. The car you drove represented your identity and status, and Fang Ye had already ordered a car, but it wasn't available immediately, so he had to rent a Rolls-Royce for the time being. Mr. Fang, welcome to visit Osborne Industries. Mr. Chairman has been waiting for you for a long time. When Fang Ye entered Osborne Industries, a blonde woman in her mid-20s came forward to greet him. Those who knew the blonde woman were surprised. After all, She was the secretary of Chairman Norman Osborne. What kind of person would make the chairman's secretary personally receive them? Please follow me, Mr. Fang. Fang Ye smiled and nodded, following the blonde woman to the entrance of the elevator. This elevator was exclusive, directly leading to Norman Osborne's office on the top floor. Guided by the blonde woman, Fang Ye met Norman Osborne for the second time. And when Norman Osborne saw Fang Ye, he unexpectedly stood up to greet him, just as enthusiastic as when they first met. Fang Ye was used to such situations, he had encountered them many times in the real world. Fang, welcome to visit Osborne Industries. Thank you. I'm honored to visit Osborne Industries. After hugging Norman Osborne, Fang Ye's smile remained unchanged. However, the enthusiasm of Americans sometimes made Fang Ye feel a bit overwhelmed. Smiling, Fang Ye took out a check. Mr. Osborne, it seems that I won our bet. Haha, Fang, I apologize for my previous underestimation. Let me thank you formally. Fang, you are a true genius. Chapter 7, Investing in Osborne Industries. Haha, Fang, I apologize for my previous underestimation and want to thank you formally. Fang, you are a true genius. Norman Osborne's tone was sincere as he openly apologized to Fang Ye. Fang Ye felt slightly surprised by Norman Osborne's generosity and magnanimity. However, he quickly understood and was at ease with it. As the chairman of Osborne Industries, Norman Osborne naturally had outstanding qualities. Fang Ye smiled lightly and didn't dwell on the topic any further, as he didn't want to appear overly aggressive. Moreover, Fang Ye didn't harbor any ill feelings toward Norman Osborne. The most crucial point was that Norman Osborne's $80,000 had indeed been a great help to Fang Ye. Fang Ye was a person who clearly distinguished between favors and grudges. At this moment, a blonde beauty, the secretary of Norman Osborne, brought over 2 glasses of red wine. Fang Ye reached out to accept them and nodded with a grateful smile. After taking a light sniff, a rich aroma filled his nostrils. Gently swirling the crystal glass, Fang Ye displayed an elegant and sophisticated demeanor. Mr. Osborne, in China, there is a saying that one smile can resolve grievances. We have always been close friends, haven't we? Fang, you're right. We have always been close friends. Norman Osborne responded with a hearty laugh. As a businessman, he prioritized his interests, and now Fang Ye was worthy of serious consideration because Fang Ye could bring him benefits. And the same went for Fang Ye. He valued the reputation of Osborne Industries. If he could cooperate with Osborne Industries, his newly founded UI fund would shorten its rise to success significantly. It could be said that the collaboration was mutually beneficial, which was why they quickly reached an agreement. Following that, Fang Ye and Norman Osborne clinked their glasses. Romani Conti, a great taste. This is from my collection, only served to the closest friends. Time passed as they exchanged compliments. An hour flew by in the blink of an eye. Fang Ye lowered his head, fell silent for a moment, and then smiled. Mr. Osborne, I have a deal I'd like to propose. I wonder if you're interested. Norman Osborne immediately became intrigued by Fang Ye's words and smiled. Oh, Fang, please go ahead. What's the deal you're proposing? Mr. Osborne, I know that you urgently need some capital at the moment, and I can provide the funds you need, enough to solve your current predicament. Fang Ye calmly gazed at Norman Osborne. Having seen the Spider-Man movies, Fang Ye naturally knew that at this moment, Norman Osborne was cooperating with the military to research a human enhancement formula, the world-famous Green Goblin formula. Researching a human enhancement formula required an enormous amount of funding, making it an endless pit that required an astronomical amount of money to fill. At this critical moment, Norman Osborne was troubled because the military not only refused to invest more money, but they were also reducing their funding. Recently, Norman Osborne had been worried about funding. Are you joking, Fang? Do I look like a person in need of money? No. Although I don't know what Mr. Osborne is researching, I know you need funding. Osborne Industries is indeed very wealthy, but it seems that those damned capitalists on the board don't fully support Mr. Osborne's research. As for your cooperating partner, it also seems that they are continuously cutting down on funding. Mr. Osborne, you should be prepared for that. Fang Ye's words were not groundless. He knew that the military was planning to withdraw funding soon, forcing Norman Osborne into a desperate situation. Otherwise, Norman Osborne wouldn't have resorted to experimenting on himself with the human enhancement formula, turning himself into the Green Goblin before the formula was fully matured. Norman Osborne fell silent upon hearing Fang Ye's words. Indeed, he had already sensed that the military was gradually withdrawing funding, and he needed to be prepared for it. The human enhancement formula was Norman Osborne's life's work, and he had never considered giving up the research. Moreover, there was another secret that no one knew: the hereditary disease of the Osborne family. And the human enhancement formula was the only hope for the Osborne family. I need to know what price I have to pay. Norman Osborne fell silent for a moment, and it was evident that he had already made up his mind. However, nothing in this world was given without reason. To gain something, one must be prepared to give something in return. Norman Osborne wouldn't naively think that Fang Ye would help him selflessly. Seeing that Norman Osborne was about to compromise, Fang Ye couldn't help but reveal a smile. I want 10% of Osborne Industries shares, and in return, I will inject $50 billion into your research lab every year. 10% of Osborne Industries shares? Fang, you're robbing me. Norman Osborne roared with indignation. The two female secretaries standing by his side became uneasy upon witnessing his anger, especially Jennifer, whose face was filled with concern as she looked at Fang Ye. Fang Ye remained calm and smiled. Mr. Osborne, we are all businessmen. This is just a trade. Actually, it was no wonder Norman Osborne was angry. After all, Osborne Industries was worth trillions, and he wanted to exchange a mere $50 billion for 10% of the shares. If it were someone else, Norman Osborne would have kicked them out long ago. But in fact, Fang Ye was indeed taking advantage of the situation. Others might not know about the Osborne family's hereditary disease, but Fang Ye, who had seen the Spider-Man movies, knew about it. Although Fang Ye said he would inject $50 billion every year, apart from the first year, the annual dividends of Osborne Industries would be much more than $50 billion. So, when Fang Ye said $50 billion in exchange for 10% of the shares, he wasn't wrong. Seeing that Fang Ye didn't buy into his act, Norman Osborne immediately put on a smile. Fang, we are friends. Norman Osborne tried to bargain, but Fang Ye didn't give him a chance. The initiative was already in Fang Ye's hands. Yes, we are friends, but business is business. Mr. Osborne, you are also a businessman, and I believe you should understand. If you agree, the $50 billion will be injected into your research lab within 2 months. Think about your research. Do you really want to give up like this, Mr. Osborne? Fang Ye's words hit the nail on the head. Giving up the research on the human enhancement formula? Norman Osborne had never considered it. However, Fang Ye's conditions were too demanding. Exchanging $50 billion for 10% of the shares was unacceptable to Norman Osborne. Fang, I can give you 5% of the shares. That's my limit. Deal. Fang Ye didn't engage in further negotiations. He knew that 10% was impossible, and 5% of the shares already satisfied him. After all, Fang Ye's bottom line was 3%. Seeing Fang Ye readily accepting his offer, Norman Osborne knew that he had been overly concerned. But at this point, it was too late to turn back. Pleasure doing business with you. Pleasure doing business with you. They lightly clinked their glasses, fulfilling the agreement, and then smiled similarly. From that moment, Fang Ye officially became one of the top 10 shareholders of Osborne Industries. Chapter 8, Deadpool. April 28, Friday, clear weather. It was an ordinary day, but a major event that shocked the media industry was about to happen. Osborne Industries and U.E.I. would hold a joint press conference at the Fenno Grand Hotel at noon today. At that time, both the chairman of Osborne Industries, Norman Osborne, and the chairman of U.E.I., Fang Ye, would personally attend the event. The American media, like sharks smelling blood, gathered in the lobby of the Fenno Grand Hotel long before noon. Hundreds of reporters were present, most of whom came for Fang Ye. While Norman Osborne rarely gave interviews, he occasionally held press conferences, so everyone was quite familiar with him. On the other hand, Fang Ye remained mysterious, and nobody knew what he looked like, making people even more curious about him. Although Fang Ye hadn't been in the United States for long, he had already created an irreplaceable myth. His fame in the financial world was soaring, and he had become a prominent figure on Wall Street. Being invited personally by the renowned international investor Jim Rogers, Fang Ye's name became widely known. Now, with Fang Ye founding U.E.I. and collaborating with Osborne Industries under such favorable conditions, his influence expanded significantly. Before keeping the reporters waiting for too long, not long after, a man dressed in white formal attire with a red rose pinned on his chest and a charming smile, accompanied by Norman Osborne, entered the venue. Mr. Fang, what are your views on the recent stock market trends? Mr. Osborne, why did you choose to collaborate with U.E.I. Mr. Fang, can you tell us why you came to the United States? Do you admire American freedom, or did you experience any inequality in your own country? The arrival of Fang Ye sparked a frenzy among the reporters, and they scrambled to ask their questions. The questions from the reporters were diverse and some even touched on political stances. One reporter even asked if Fang Ye had a girlfriend. Fang Ye was accustomed to such occasions and responded calmly. After all, he had experienced numerous situations like this in the real world. Norman Osborne observed Fang Ye attentively and was impressed by how composed he remained throughout the press conference. Norman had thought that someone of Fang Ye's age would be somewhat nervous for the first time, but now he realized how unnecessary his concern was. After a while, Norman's blonde secretary took the stage. Welcome, friends from the major media outlets, radio stations, and television networks, to the press conference jointly organized by Osborne Industries and U.E.I. Fund. The focus of this press conference is the collaboration between Osborne Industries and U.E.I. Fund, as well as the matter of Mr. Fang Ye becoming the 6th largest shareholder of Osborne Industries. After the introduction by the secretary, both Norman Osborne and Fang Ye gave speeches, discussing some future cooperation between the two parties. Once their speeches concluded, the host, the blonde secretary, invited the reporters to ask questions. The reporter from the Star Island Daily, with the newspaper's logo on his clothes, stood up and grabbed the microphone. Mr. Fang Ye, I am Allison from the Star Island Daily. I want to ask Mr. Fang Ye. The press conference proceeded smoothly, and during its course, both Norman Osborne and Fang Ye answered the reporters' questions. By the time it was 2:30 in the afternoon, the press conference ended successfully. There was no doubt that the collaboration between Osborne Industries and U.E.I. Fund, with Fang Ye becoming the 6th largest shareholder of Osborne Industries, would become tomorrow's headline in major newspapers and the focal point of news on various television stations. Time passed quickly, and 2 years flew by unnoticed. During these 2 years, U.E.I. Fund flourished under Fang Ye's leadership and had become one of the 3 major funds in the United States, with a global reputation. It ranked 7th among the top 10 financial funds in the world. However, U.E.I. Fund was different from other funds in that it was not publicly listed. Despite its market value exceeding $1 trillion, it was still much lower than that of Osborne Industries or Stark Industries. However, U.E.I. Fund was unique because Fang Ye held a 100% controlling stake due to it not being publicly listed. Finally here, Fang Ye suddenly felt a sense of danger in his heart. It was a premonition from his extraordinary perception that something dangerous was approaching. However, Fang Ye remained calm and even smiled. A figure gradually appeared on the sofa opposite the office. The person wore a tight black suit, carried 2 black long blades on his back, military daggers on both sides of his legs, and 2 red handguns at his waist. It was none other than Deadpool. Chapter 9, Is $1 billion USD annual salary enough? Mr. Wilson, welcome to your arrival. Seeing Deadpool appearing on the opposite sofa, a smile crept up at the corners of Fang Ye's mouth. Although he knew that Deadpool's target this time was him, Fang Ye remained unfazed. Deadpool's real name was Wade Wilson, a battle-hardened Special Forces operative. Unfortunately, Wade Wilson had a stroke of bad luck and contracted cancer. In order to cure the cancer, he participated in a certain organization's Weapon X program. After being infused with Wolverine's genes, Wade Wilson gained the ability to extend his life. But later, due to a curse, he became virtually immortal and possessed even stronger regenerative powers than Wolverine. Fang Ye's gaze shifted to the waist of Deadpool, where there was an instant teleportation device on his belt. Having both immortality and instant teleportation, Deadpool was not the most powerful being in the entire Marvel Universe, but he was undoubtedly one of the most difficult enemies to deal with. As for the instant teleportation device on his belt, it was undoubtedly a piece of advanced technology. Earth's current technology level couldn't possibly produce such a spatial teleportation device. While Fang Ye was observing Deadpool, Deadpool was also sizing him up. So, you're the Nightfall who rose in Wall Street 2 years ago, known as the uncrowned king of the financial world? I heard you're very, very rich. Too bad someone offered $300 million to buy your head. With so much money, maybe you won't have the chance to spend it. Deadpool said, his face filled with envy and jealousy because Fang Ye was indeed extremely wealthy. Deadpool had a fondness for USD, and as long as the price was right, he dared to assassinate even the President of the United States. Among all the superheroes and criminals in the Marvel world, Deadpool's love for money was well known. For USD, he was willing to do anything? Mr. Wilson. Fang Ye's mouth twitched, interrupting Deadpool's words. Fang Ye suspected that if he didn't cut Deadpool off, he might go on talking for an hour. Mr. Wilson, in fact, the bounty was placed by me, and it was specifically aimed at you. The reason is that you, Mr. Wilson, are rarely seen. I had to use this method to get a chance to meet you. Fang Ye explained. Oh, no. My USD. Deadpool let out a miserable cry as if someone had cut a piece of flesh from him. You see, this bounty was worth $300 million, and Deadpool hadn't received such a big job in years. However, upon learning that the person who placed the bounty was none other than Fang Ye himself, Deadpool knew that the remaining $250 million was definitely unattainable. But even if he didn't get the money, so what? Deadpool didn't need a reason to kill, he didn't care about the target's identity. Anyone who dared to play tricks on Deadpool would have to prepare to meet their end. Fang Ye seemed to understand Deadpool's thoughts and couldn't help but smile. He knew that Deadpool had made a wise choice. Having Deadpool by his side meant his safety was ensured, and he could implement the plans he had been preparing for the past 2 years. Although Fang Ye had achieved his current position in this world, his ultimate goal had always been to return to the real world. Moreover, in the real world, Fang Ye's power and influence were not much different from his current state in the Marvel world. In Fang Ye's plan, the first step was to develop and expand his influence. The second step was to gain strength. Currently, Fang Ye had a clue. With the current relationship between S.H.I.E.L.D and Osborne Industries, if Fang Ye wanted to obtain the green mutagen, it wouldn't be difficult. However, the side effects of the green mutagen were too severe, and Fang Ye had abandoned the idea 2 years ago. Besides, he already had a goal in mind. As for the third step, it involved the Cosmic Cube. Obtaining the Cosmic Cube was the only hope of returning to the real world. But once the Cosmic Cube appeared, S.H.I.E.L.D would definitely intervene, and other forces would also have their eyes on it, including extraterrestrial beings and divine entities from Asgard. By that time, it would depend on whether Fang Ye's power and influence were large enough. Otherwise, even if he managed to retrieve the Cosmic Cube, he would end up doing someone else's wedding dress. This was why Fang Ye had developed his influence to such a large extent but still had to take risks to gain strength. It was worth noting that regardless of any serum or blood, the failure rate of fusion was very high. Once the fusion failed, it meant death. But for the sake of returning to the real world, Fang Ye had to take risks and even dare to antagonize the whole world. If you work for me, your task will be to protect my personal safety, and the annual salary will be $1 billion USD. Is that enough for you? Fang Ye continued to smile at Deadpool, confident that Deadpool would be tempted. Among all the superheroes and criminals in the Marvel world, Deadpool's love for money was unrivaled. To have a super bodyguard by his side, Fang Ye had done everything he could. He had even placed a bounty to have Deadpool assassinate him in secret. Throughout the entire Marvel world, Deadpool might not be the most powerful, but he was definitely among the top ranks. $1 billion USD might sound like a lot, but for Fang Ye now, if he spent $1 billion USD every year to keep Deadpool as his bodyguard, it would be totally worth it. $1 billion USD. Stars began to shine in Deadpool's eyes. USD had an irresistible attraction to him. If he became Fang Ye's bodyguard, he could receive an annual salary, and it didn't seem so difficult to accept, especially considering he would still have his freedom, though not as much as before. Seeing Deadpool hesitating, Fang Ye added a little more to the offer. $1 billion USD is just the annual salary. In addition, there will be a bonus at the end of each year. As long as you ensure my safety, the minimum bonus will be 100 million USD. Every year, the bonus will double. The premise is that you can guarantee my safety. If I encounter any accidents, even if it's just a minor injury, your year-end bonus will be forfeited. Deadpool's breath became rapid. A year-end bonus of 100 million USD? It would double every year from then on. Deadpool calculated silently in his heart. As long as he ensured Fang Ye's safety for 10 years, he would get a year-end bonus of 1 billion USD after 10 years. Plus, the 1 billion USD annual salary, he could earn more than 20 billion USD every year after 10 years. And if it were 20 or even 30 years later, he would earn 3 to 4 billion USD every year? For Deadpool, who possessed immortality, 10 years would pass in the blink of an eye. Thinking of this, Deadpool quickly agreed. I agree. Welcome, Mr. Wilson, to join UI Fund. Fang Ye's smile became even brighter. Although he was confident he could convince Deadpool, he still felt relieved when Deadpool finally agreed. Deadpool was crucial to his plan. With Deadpool by his side, his safety was ensured, and he could carry out the plans he had been preparing for the past 2 years. Even though Fang Ye had achieved his current position in this world, his ultimate goal had always been to return to the real world. Moreover, in the real world, Fang Ye's power and influence were not much different from his current state in the Marvel world. In Fang Ye's plan, the first step was to develop and expand his influence. The second step was to gain strength. Currently, Fang Ye had a clue. With the current relationship between S.H.I.E.L.D and Osborne Industries, if Fang Ye wanted to obtain the green mutagen, it wouldn't be difficult. However, the side effects of the green mutagen were too severe, and Fang Ye had abandoned the idea 2 years ago. Besides, he already had a goal in mind. Chapter 10, The Laboratory. Mr. Wilson, now that you've agreed to become my bodyguard, does that mean we're on the same side? Fang Ye's mouth curled into a sinister smile, causing Deadpool to shiver involuntarily. What do you want to do? Deadpool, although fearless in most situations, felt a bit apprehensive facing Fang Ye. To establish the revenge fund for his own safety, investing trillions of USD and shares in 2 major industrial companies, Fang Ye had done such crazy things that Deadpool couldn't think of anything he wouldn't dare to do. No, Mr. Wilson, don't be nervous. I just want to make another deal with you, Fang Ye said. What kind of deal? Deadpool's interest was piqued. For him, a deal meant money in his pocket. Fang Ye's gaze shifted to Deadpool's waist, or rather, to the spatial teleportation device installed on his belt. If he could figure out the principles behind the spatial teleportation device and replicate it, wouldn't he be able to teleport instantly as well? In the Marvel world, there were a few individuals capable of spatial teleportation, but they were scarce. If Fang Ye could replicate the spatial teleportation device and equip himself with it, his safety factor would increase significantly. He was also very interested in the 2 knives on Deadpool's back, rumored to be made of adamantium. Mr. Wilson, I would like to rent your belt and the 2 knives on your back. How about a daily rent of $5 million USD? You should know that this is already a very high price, and I'm planning to rent them for a month, which means you'll have $150 million US in your account immediately. Fang Ye's eyes held a smile, and he intentionally emphasized the words USD. Of course, Fang Ye would never admit that he was using intimidation and temptation. At most, it was just catering to Deadpool's interests. No problem, but I need to receive the money first. To Fang Ye's surprise, Deadpool agreed very readily. Fang Ye thought Deadpool wouldn't agree and had proposed the deal with only a glimmer of hope. He didn't expect Deadpool to accept it so readily. Leaving aside the 2 knives made of adamantium, the spatial teleportation device on Deadpool's belt was crucial to him. The money will be transferred to your account immediately. Now, follow me to the underground research lab. Fang Ye said, feeling puzzled by Deadpool's quick acceptance, but it didn't matter to him. As long as he got the belt, he was content. Now, all he hoped for was that the scientists in the lab wouldn't disappoint him. It was worth mentioning that Fang Ye had set up the research lab a year ago and invited many scientists, biologists, geneticists, and others, using various means, as long as they had certain fame and strength. Fang Ye even poached several industrial groups, which left many capitalists itching with resentment. But since Fang Ye didn't care about money, they couldn't do anything about it. As long as you swing the pickaxe well, there's no wall that can't be brought down. There are ways to deal with good people and ways to deal with bad people, namely money, power, fame, and profit, all of which Fang Ye could offer them. In just 1 year, Fang Ye's research lab had grown rapidly, and now its level was undoubtedly at the top in the world. However, the amount of money Fang Ye invested was also terrifying. Almost all of UI Fund's profits were poured into the research lab. Fang Ye led Deadpool to the special elevator on the top floor, and at present, no more than 10 people in the entire UI Fund had the right to use this private elevator because it led directly to the Underground Research Institute. The Underground Research Lab was located 100 meters below the UI building, with enough space to accommodate 5,000 people for their daily lives. Under normal circumstances, Fang Ye did not allow the scientists to leave for the sake of confidentiality, but he compensated them handsomely. Also, Fang Ye had signed a 5-year contract with those scientists. After 5 years of work, he would no longer be concerned about their future. As a result, the scientists didn't have much to complain about. After all, they had the most cutting-edge instruments here and an inexhaustible research budget. Here, they could focus wholeheartedly on their research without running around for funding as they had to do before. This was also the main reason why most scientists chose to stay. When the elevator reached the underground research lab, Fang Ye led Deadpool to the research center. Along the way, many scientists greeted Fang Ye, and he nodded and smiled in response, without any bossy airs. However, if you thought Fang Ye was easy to deal with, you would be completely mistaken. After a year of contact, the scientists knew very well that if he gave you a little leeway, you would take a mile. Fang Ye would show you the consequences of pushing too far. Boss, you're here. Dr. Connors, how's your limb regeneration experiment going? As Fang Ye and Deadpool entered the research center, in the laboratory filled with instruments, a middle-aged man wearing a white lab coat, Dr. Connors, stood in front of a large glass wall, and when he saw Fang Ye, he quickly greeted him. The man known as Dr. Connors was a university biology professor who had lost his right arm and was specializing in limb regeneration. For those who had seen the Spider-Man movies, Dr. Connors should be very familiar as the infamous villain, the Lizard. However, a year ago, Dr. Connors was invited by Fang Ye to join his newly established research lab currently. He was one of the high-ranking members of the lab. The reason Fang Ye valued Dr. Connors was because he had a very high level of expertise in biology, which might be helpful to Fang Ye's future plans. As for the lizard serum that Dr. Connors had developed, Fang Ye wasn't interested. His goal was the Green Giant serum. Fang Ye's goal had always been the Green Giant serum. Since the fusion of any serum, concoction, or genes had an extremely high failure rate, almost a matter of life and death, why not fuse with the strongest one? Although the Green Giant might not be the strongest in the Marvel world, his strength was undoubtedly among the top ranks, and at least on Earth, no one could kill him. But Dr. Banner, the Green Giant, was currently evading the military's pursuit. Although Fang Ye knew that Dr. Banner was hiding in Porto Verde, Brazil, Who had the ability to snatch the serum from him? Unless Dr. Banner volunteered, nobody could handle the Hulk if they provoked him. However, after waiting for 2 years, the opportunity had finally come. The progress of the events was similar to the movies. The military had already discovered Dr. Banner's whereabouts, and Fang Ye had also been keeping an eye on someone, Mr. Blue, who had always been in contact with Dr. Banner. Mr. Blue was Fang Ye's chance to obtain the Green Giant serum. Let me introduce you. This is Mr. Wilson, and this is Dr. Connors, the head of the research center, Fang Ye said, while keeping the Green Giant serum in mind. He couldn't forget his own business. Though Fang Ye was thinking about the Green Giant serum, he didn't forget his business. He smirked at Dr. Connors and said, Dr. Connors, Mr. Wilson possesses an ability of immortality, which might interest you. S/N, consider giving some power stones for this novel. Your support is my motivation. Chapter 11, Dr. William. Upon hearing that Deadpool had an immortal body, Dr. Connors was immediately intrigued. Dr. Connors' research on limb regeneration mainly involved cultivating mutant lizards, extracting their genes, and creating a potion that fused with human genes, granting humans the same or even superior regenerative abilities as the mutant lizards. Since Deadpool possessed an immortal body, it was evident that he had powerful self-healing abilities, which might have similarities with Dr. Connors' research. Obtaining Deadpool's genetic serum would undoubtedly be of great help to his research. Dr. Connors couldn't help but feel excited, trying to force a smile on his face. Mr. Wilson, I wonder if you could give me some of your serum? Just 10 milliliters will do. I have no problem giving you my serum, but it won't be free. $1 million per milliliter. Deadpool truly loved money. Every sentence he spoke involved money, and he didn't frown at all when selling his blood for cash. No problem. I can wire $10 million to you right away. Before Fang Ye could say anything, Dr. Connors eagerly agreed to the deal. A mere $10 million was nothing to Dr. Connors, as he had become a billionaire since joining Fang Ye. For the sake of his limb regeneration research, Dr. Connors wouldn't hesitate even if it meant spending his entire fortune. Deal. A hint of envy appeared in Deadpool's eyes. He now realized that the people at U.E. Foundation were incredibly wealthy. An ordinary research room supervisor casually handed over $10 million without batting an eye. How could Deadpool not feel envious? Deadpool secretly celebrated his choice to join U.E. Foundation. Would he also become incredibly wealthy in the future? The thought of earning billions of dollars in annual salary filled him with happiness. His gaze toward Fang Ye changed too. In Deadpool's eyes, Fang Ye had become a shining golden mountain. Whoever dared to mess with his golden mountain would undoubtedly face his wrath. Feeling uncomfortable under Deadpool's eerie gaze, Fang Ye cleared his throat and turned to Dr. Connors beside him. Dr. Connors, call Dr. William to the research center. I have something to discuss with him. Boss, wait a moment. Dr. Connors walked to the counter and picked up the communication device. Dr. William, the boss wants to see you in the research center. Come immediately. Repeat, come to the research center immediately. The research center founded by Fang Ye was divided into the Science Research Department and the Genetics Department. The Genetics Department focused on researching serums, genes, and related matters. It was established to prepare for the fusion of the Hulk serum. Naturally, Dr. Connors was the head of the Genetics Department. The Science Research Department was responsible for technological development, and its head was Dr. William. Dr. William, whose name was quite ordinary, wasn't well known at present, but he was going to achieve something world-shaking in the future. Those who had watched the Avengers might recognize Dr. William as the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who was controlled by Loki and used the Tesseract to open a space portal. However, at the moment, Dr. William was still an unknown figure. A year ago, Fang Ye learned that Dr. William hadn't joined S.H.I.E.L.D. yet and managed to convince him at a great cost. Dr. William didn't disappoint Fang Ye. He had remarkable achievements in space research. If Fang Ye's plan went smoothly, and he acquired the Tesseract, he would heavily rely on Dr. William to figure out how to use it to open a spacetime tunnel. Thus, Fang Ye highly valued Dr. William, even more than anyone else. Other talents could be replaced, but Dr. William couldn't, at least for now. Fang Ye hadn't found anyone better than him in the field of space research. Soon, a middle-aged white man dressed in a white lab coat hurriedly arrived at the research center. Boss. Dr. William seemed a bit out of breath from rushing. Have a seat. Fang Ye smiled slightly and pointed to the nearby sofa. Dr. William, I've called you here because there's something important for you to do. You are an expert in space research, and I have something I'd like you to study. If you can thoroughly research it and replicate the item, I'll double the funding for the Science Research Department next year. Then, Fang Ye looked at Deadpool beside him and said, Wilson, take off your belt and weapons and give them to Dr. William for his research. Boss, don't forget my money. As Deadpool took off his belt, he reminded Fang Ye, of course, I won't forget. The money will be wired to your account immediately, Fang Ye solemnly promised. He had to reassure Deadpool, or else he might end up losing his patience. What is this? Dr. William received the belt Deadpool handed him and carefully examined it, but he didn't find anything unusual. It's just an ordinary belt, but it has a spatial moving device installed on it. When activated, it can allow people to teleport instantly. Fang Ye briefly introduced the device to Dr. William, hoping that he could replicate the spatial teleportation device. Fang Ye was willing to invest any amount of money to make it happen. Wow! Dr. William took a sharp breath and then a thrilled expression appeared on his face. He was obsessed with space research, and his achievements were a result of his dedication to the field. Boss, I'll get right to work. I'll return the item to Wilson in half a month. Dr. William was brimming with confidence. He was already confident of completing the research within 6 months, and now, with Deadpool's belt in hand, his certainty had grown. Fang Ye nodded in agreement. He then looked at Deadpool and said, Wilson, come with me. I have something to discuss with you. All right, but remember my money. I won't forget. Fang Ye interrupted Deadpool's words, blackening his face. No matter who it was, being constantly reminded of a debt was bound to affect one's mood, and Fang Ye was no exception. Deadpool pouted, feeling a little wronged. Wasn't it normal to ask for payment when owed money? Chapter 12, Hulk Serum. After leaving the underground laboratory and returning to the top-floor office, Fang Ye sat down on the sofa. Deadpool was truly dedicated, sticking closely behind Fang Ye, looking like a guard protecting his precious possessions. In Deadpool's eyes, Fang Ye was like a pile of money, and it was all his. Fang Ye ignored Deadpool and poured himself a glass of red wine. Taking a sip, he picked up a document from the desk and examined it closely. Mr. Blue, also known as Dr. Stern, was born in Illinois in 1976 and is currently unmarried. He is an outstanding expert in gamma-ray research. Several pages of information recorded Dr. Stern's basic information and current situation. With Fang Ye's current status, it was a piece of cake to obtain information about Dr. Stern. This was the advantage of having financial power. Boss, is this person important? Deadpool stood behind Fang Ye and couldn't help but ask curiously while seeing Fang Ye carefully reading the information about Dr. Stern. Very important. Fang Ye replied casually without paying much attention. Did he offend you, boss? I can go kill him, but you'll have to pay me extra in dollars. I'm a top-notch assassin in the industry, and my prices are very high. But now that you're my boss, I can give you a discount. Deadpool offered, trying to use money as leverage. Shut up, or I'll deduct your bonus at the end of the year. Fang Ye's face twitched slightly, and he couldn't bear Deadpool's constant pestering. Even someone with good temper would have exploded by now. Fang Ye was both amused and helpless with Deadpool, who was crazy about money. Because he had this flaw, Fang Ye believed that he could be controlled. However, when someone kept asking for money, chattering in your ear non-stop, even the best temper would be tested. Besides, Fang Ye didn't consider himself a particularly good-tempered person. He sometimes wondered if it was a right move to keep Deadpool as his bodyguard. But then again, he had eaten the money of his bodyguard and therefore had some control over him. Will you go to Colorado and bring back something for me? The Hulk serum was of utmost importance, and Fang Ye couldn't afford any mistakes. To ensure that everything went smoothly, he planned to send Deadpool to retrieve the serum. After you return, I'll reward you with $10 million? Of course, if you're not willing to go, forget it. I believe many people would be willing to take a trip for $10 million. Fang Ye said, trying to entice Deadpool with the promise of a bonus. Deadpool's unwillingness instantly vanished upon hearing the amount. I'll go, boss, you can count on me to complete whatever you order. Don't worry, with me on the job, nothing unexpected will happen. Deadpool pledged wholeheartedly, eager for the opportunity to earn $10 million. Fang Ye knew that Deadpool was sold on the deal. Fine, if something goes wrong, then I'm sorry, but your $100 million bonus at the end of the year will be gone. You'll have to deal with it yourself. Fang Ye no longer wanted to talk to Deadpool. If this continued, he might be driven crazy. He waved his hand, dismissing Deadpool to go on his errand. Back in the office, Fang Ye's mind was full of thoughts about Dr. Stern and the Hulk serum. He hoped that Dr. Stern had already acquired it. He had planned to approach Dr. Stern initially, trying to persuade him to deceive Banner and obtain the Hulk serum. But he eventually gave up on the idea. He didn't want to take any risks that could lead to losing the serum. Therefore, he only allowed a part of the serum to be intercepted and sent to Dr. Stern, while keeping some for himself. Fang Ye's laboratory had experts in gamma-ray research, but he couldn't guarantee that they were better than Dr. Stern. In case Dr. Stern's research produced better results, Fang Ye wanted to be prepared. Hulk serum couldn't be injected directly, it was a suicidal act. The serum needed to be processed into a medicinal formula. However, the green giant's blood contained immense energy, making the standard methods unsuitable. But Dr. Stern, being an expert in gamma-ray research, had successfully developed a new method for the serum and created a serum that could transform people into Hulk-like beings. The proof was right in front of them with the creation of Abomination. Though Abomination had defects, gaining the power of the Hulk was still a tremendous breakthrough. However, Fang Ye didn't plan to let Abomination resurface. He had been closely monitoring Dr. Stern, and if Dr. Stern successfully developed the serum, Fang Ye would invite him to join his research team to create an even better Hulk serum. As for the issue of Bruce Banner's inability to transform back from the Hulk, how did that concern Fang Ye? He only cared about achieving his goal and returning to the real world. Hope Dr. Stern won't disappoint me, Fang Ye muttered to himself, knowing that the success rate of fusing the serum was extremely low. He didn't know if he would succeed, but to return to reality, he had to try. Was Fang Ye afraid of death? Yes, he was afraid. He was definitely afraid of death. But there were things that had to be done because some things were more important than life itself. Chapter 13, Serum Potion. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye, and Fang Ye had been anxiously waiting for 2 days. Until this afternoon, Deadpool finally returned and successfully brought back the Hulk serum. Looking at the thumb-sized test tube placed on the glass table, filled with red blood, a smile appeared on Fang Ye's lips. To obtain the Hulk serum, he had been planning for over a year, and now, the serum was finally in his hands. How rare was the Hulk serum? Fang Ye knew better than anyone. In fact, there were many forces in the world eyeing the Hulk serum, all wanting to use it to study and produce a serum potion to cultivate their own super soldiers. But the Hulk was too powerful, and so far, no force had successfully obtained the Hulk serum. Even S.H.I.E.L.D, Hydra, or the US military had not succeeded, because the Hulk was too powerful. From this, one could see how precious the Hulk serum in front of Fang Ye was. If Fang Ye was short of money, he could sell the Hulk serum and make a considerable amount of money. He believed that many major forces would be interested in the Hulk serum. With the Hulk serum in hand, Fang Ye was in a very good mood. Glancing at Deadpool, who was standing beside him with a look of wanting to say something but stopping himself, Fang Ye couldn't help but smile. Wilson, you did a great job this time. Go to the finance department to collect your reward. I've already informed them. Thank you, boss. Deadpool immediately put on a smile. To him, nothing else mattered as long as Fang Ye didn't deduct his bonus. Go, don't waste my time. Seeing Deadpool rush out of the office instantly, Fang Ye couldn't help but shake his head wryly. He wondered if he had been too hard on Deadpool lately. He didn't want to beat him into a psychological disorder. Picking up the test tube and shaking it gently, watching the red blood flow inside, Fang Ye couldn't help but sigh. Although he had obtained the Hulk serum, whether he could turn it into a serum potion and whether the fusion of the serum potion would be successful, only heaven knew. Soon, Fang Ye picked up the phone on the desk and dialed a number. Dr. Connors, come to my office. Yes, boss. Dr. Connors didn't keep Fang Ye waiting for long, and soon Fang Ye heard a knock on the door. Come in, boss. Dr. Connors looked respectful, and Fang Ye smiled lightly, pointing to the sofa opposite. Have a seat. After Dr. Connors sat down, Fang Ye poured him a glass of red wine. Dr. Connors was pleasantly surprised and quickly took the wine glass, thanking him. Fang Ye took a sip of red wine, lit a cigarette, and took a deep drag before exhaling. Dr. Connors, I just got a unique serum, and I want you to gather all the experts in the genetics department to turn this serum into a potion as quickly as possible. Boss, do you know what kind of serum it is? Dr. Connors suddenly became interested. For him, researching genes or serums was not only his job but also his biggest passion and hobby. Fang Ye opened the box placed on the table, revealing the test tube inside, but the serum was only half full, as the other half had already been sent to Dr. Stern. What kind of animal's blood is this? It's not an animal's blood, it's the blood of a special human. Is it a mutant serum? You can think of it that way. Fang Ye didn't explain much. After all, the Hulk wasn't famous yet, and even if he said it was the Hulk serum, Dr. Connors wouldn't know what the Hulk was. Since Dr. Connors regarded the special human as a mutant, then let it be a mutant serum? However, Dr. Connors became very excited. The existence of mutants was not a secret, and many ordinary people knew that there were mutants in the world. Dr. Connors didn't find mutants surprising. But Dr. Connors never expected that he would have the opportunity to study mutant serum one day. With excitement in his eyes, Dr. Connors looked at the Hulk serum and became extremely passionate. Within 3 days, I want to see the serum potion in front of me. Boss, rest assured, making the serum potion doesn't require much time. Dr. Connors promised confidently because making the serum potion indeed didn't take much time. Moreover, the genetics department had more than 10 top biologists, and if these people joined forces, wouldn't they be able to produce the serum potion? However, This was the first time since the establishment of the laboratory that Fang Ye had given such a serious task. Dr. Connors dared not take it lightly. I know making the serum doesn't take much time, but the energy contained in this serum is too immense. The human body is too weak to bear it. We've been studying for 2 full days and nights, and this is the best we can do so far, Dr. Connors quickly explained. They indeed spent 2 full days and nights on research, but the energy contained in the Hulk serum was too immense and powerful. The highest fusion success rate of 3% was already their limit. The success rate is too low. Fang Ye frowned. The highest fusion success rate of 3% was not something he believed he could achieve with his luck. A 3% success rate in the fusion would be seeking death? However, Fang Ye also knew that Dr. Connors had done his best. After all, making the serum potion in just 3 days was already very good. You can go now. Continue researching the serum potion. The focus of the genetics department from now on will be on this serum potion until it is perfected. Yes. Dr. Connors didn't dare to say much. Fang Ye was currently in a bad mood. After Dr. Connors left, Fang Ye couldn't help but lower his head in thought because he thought of something. Emil Blinsky, also known as the Abomination, was the only person who successfully fused with the Hulk serum and obtained the Hulk's power. Why was it that only Emil Blinsky succeeded in the fusion? It was because he had injected himself with the super soldier serum before becoming the Abomination. Could it be that the super soldier serum can increase the fusion success rate? Fang Ye couldn't help but wonder. Fang Ye couldn't get his hands on the super soldier serum. The military guarded it too closely. However, even without the super soldier serum, Fang Ye could use the goblin serum as a substitute. After pouring a glass of wine and drinking it all in one gulp, Fang Ye muttered, "It seems that I'll have to talk to Norman Osborne tomorrow." Chapter 14, Making an Appointment with Osborne. Jennifer, help me make an appointment with Mr. Osborne for tomorrow morning at around 10 o'clock. As you wish, sir. Times have changed. With Fang Ye's current status and identity, arranging a meeting with Norman Osborne was just a matter of making a phone call. Fang Ye represented not only himself but also the forces behind him. These forces, big or small, might not amount to much individually. However, with Fang Ye's existence and the establishment of the UEI Foundation, hundreds and thousands of forces were united, and together, they could shake any major power. This was the reason why the UEI Foundation, though only founded 2 years ago, was not to be underestimated. The next morning, Osborne Industrial Building, top floor executive office. Fang Ye, you are really an irresponsible director. You haven't been to the company for 6 months. Mr. Osborne, you know how busy the UEI Foundation is. Fang Ye smiled wryly and casually brushed off the remark. Perhaps knowing that Fang Ye wasn't fond of Western etiquette, Norman Osborne simply shook hands with him and led Fang Ye to the living room. After they sat down, Norman poured a glass of wine for Fang Ye. Fang Ye, do you know? Even now, I find it hard to believe that in just 2 short years, the UEI Foundation has achieved so much. Norman Osborne sighed with emotion. He truly hadn't expected that the young man who had bet against him for a mere $100,000 2 years ago would achieve such success. Although the UEI Foundation hadn't gone public, its valuation had already exceeded trillions of US dollars. While it couldn't yet compare with companies like Osborne Industries or Stark Industries, which were valued in tens of trillions or even hundreds of trillions of dollars, one mustn't forget that the UEI Foundation was only established 2 years ago, and it still had boundless growth potential. While the UEI Foundation has achieved some results, it is still too young and can hardly be compared to Osborne Industries. Even if I admire it, I envy you, Mr. Osborne. Fang Ye raised his glass and joked. Fang Ye, you're being modest. Everyone loved to hear good things, and Norman Osborne was no exception. Especially when such compliments came from someone of Fang Ye's status and identity, someone almost on par with him. The conversation between Fang Ye and Norman Osborne continued, discussing matters related to Osborne Industries. Half an hour later, Fang Ye cleared his throat. Mr. Osborne, in our country, there's a saying that goes, when you have no troubles, you don't go to the Temple of the Three Treasures. The reason I came to Osborne Industries today is to discuss something with you. Oh, Norman Osborne replied lightly, waiting for Fang Ye to continue. Fang Ye smiled, clinked glasses with Osborne, and said, Mr. Osborne, how is the research progress on the human enhancement potion? Norman Osborne's expression slightly trembled upon hearing this, but he quickly regained his composure. Very few people knew about the human enhancement potion, but considering Fang Ye's status and identity, inquiring about it wouldn't be difficult for him. The research on the human enhancement potion has been progressing smoothly so far. However, we've recently encountered a bottleneck. If you are willing to provide additional funding, I believe the human enhancement potion will soon break through the bottleneck and achieve results. Adding funding is not a problem. The reason I came to you today, Mr. Osborne, is precisely because of this matter. Fang Ye's answer surprised Norman Osborne. He couldn't sit still anymore. Really? Norman Osborne's face showed ecstatic joy, but then he quickly restrained his smile because he knew there was no such thing as a free lunch. So, I wonder what I have to offer in return. I want the data on the human enhancement potion. I believe you are well aware of the strength of my research lab. I'd like to collaborate with you on the research of the human enhancement potion. Of course, any achievements made will belong to Osborne Industries, as I am also one of the directors of Osborne Industries. Norman Osborne's expression changed slightly. He was indeed aware of the strength of Fang Ye's research lab, which surpassed his own lab in many ways. However, the human enhancement potion was related to the genetic disease in the Osborne family, and any accidents were absolutely unacceptable. Seeing Norman Osborne hesitating, Fang Ye decided to increase the stakes. Mr. Osborne, a single individual may have short-term plans, but cooperating with someone else can lead to long-term benefits. Besides, Mr. Osborne, I'm afraid your time is limited, right? Hasn't the onset of your family's genetic disease been shortening recently? I wonder how much time you have left. You? How do you know? Norman Osborne was truly shocked. The matter of the Osborne family's genetic disease had always been a secret of the family. Even his son, Harry, didn't know about it. Fang Ye didn't answer Norman Osborne's question but continued to persuade him with a smile. If the two research labs join forces, I believe the research time will be greatly reduced. Perhaps we can perfect the human enhancement potion before your disease fully manifests, Mr. Osborne. Norman Osborne was torn between his choices. As Fang Ye had guessed, the onset of his disease was getting shorter and shorter, and he didn't know when the genetic disease would completely erupt. However, the human enhancement potion was his life's work, and he couldn't easily share it with Fang Ye. He couldn't accept it. But upon hearing Fang Ye's last words, Norman Osborne couldn't help but think of his son, Harry. He couldn't help but let out a sigh. Does Norman Osborne not love his son? Many people might think he doesn't, and even his son, Harry, thought so. Because Norman Osborne was burdened with too much responsibility, and the hereditary disease of the family almost crushed him. He had to develop the human enhancement potion not only for himself but also for his son, Harry. Perhaps, only Fang Ye could understand him, but Fang Ye wasn't a good confidant. Clearly, he was treating this matter as a bargaining chip in negotiations. Chapter 15, Peter Parker. Perhaps cooperating with Fang Ye is not a bad choice. Thinking of his son Harry, Norman Osborne couldn't help but sigh. Even if he didn't care for himself, he had to consider Harry. In Norman Osborne's original plan, if he failed in developing the human enhancement potion, everything would be inherited by Harry. And Harry would continue his research until the human enhancement potion was perfected, completely solving the hereditary disease of the Osborne family. But now, seeking cooperation with Fang Ye gave Norman Osborne a glimmer of hope. Because if they cooperated, and the two research laboratories worked together, there might be a chance to perfect the human enhancement potion before his illness progressed. No one is unafraid of death, and Norman Osborne was no exception, especially with his high status and the endless wealth he possessed. Besides, the responsibility of solving the family's hereditary disease should not fall on Harry's shoulders. If there was a choice, Norman Osborne would rather bear this responsibility himself. Fang, I can agree to cooperate, but I have a few requests. Please speak. Seeing Norman Osborne compromise, a hint of a smile appeared in Fang Ye's eyes. I can agree to cooperate, but I must be the one leading the development of the human enhancement potion, and the research results must belong to Osborne Industries. No problem. After all, I am also a shareholder of Osborne Industries. Fang Ye never thought of claiming the human enhancement potion for himself. When Norman Osborne presented his two requests, he readily agreed without hesitation. Now that you've agreed, I wish us a pleasant cooperation. A pleasant cooperation. The two shook hands, officially reaching a cooperative intention. It is worth mentioning that after Fang Ye invested a large amount of money and 2 years of continuous research, the human enhancement potion had become very refined. The success rate of fusion injections had increased by a whopping 20% compared to 2 years ago. However, the human enhancement potion had always had a fatal flaw. Norman Osborne had pondered over it for 2 years but still couldn't find a solution. The fatal flaw was that if the potion was injected, it would have adverse effects on a person's mind. There was even a great possibility of developing a second personality, but now, with the two research laboratories collaborating, there might be hope to overcome this challenge. This was one of the main reasons that excited Norman Osborne. Next, Fang Ye and Norman Osborne discussed some topics related to the human enhancement potion, but the main focus was on the cooperation between the two research laboratories. After reaching a cooperative intention, Fang Ye's smile became even brighter. With the human enhancement potion, the success rate of fusing the Hulk's blood serum would greatly increase. Dr. Connor's research report mentioned that the main reason for the low success rate was the frailty of the human body. Now, with the human enhancement potion, it would undoubtedly enhance the body's qualities and increase the success rate of fusing the Hulk's blood serum. Once the fusion of the Hulk's blood serum succeeded, and Fang Ye obtained strength comparable to that of the Hulk, he could consider implementing the third step of his plan. Fang Ye had always known the whereabouts of the Cosmic Cube. Currently, it was sealed along with Captain America. Finding the Cosmic Cube was not difficult, but the real challenge was how to protect it once found. Once the Cosmic Cube appeared, it would undoubtedly attract the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D, mutant powers, extraterrestrial forces, and the gods. As one of the 6 infinity gems in the universe, it was enough to make any force covet it. Currently, Fang Ye's power seemed to be good, but it was still far from enough to protect the Cosmic Cube. Even if he successfully fused with the Hulk's blood serum, it would still be difficult to safeguard the Cosmic Cube. The Hulk's power was indeed formidable, but he was still a lone force. Therefore, Fang Ye's next move was to recruit some subordinates. Whether they were superheroes, supervillains, or mutants, as long as their strength met the standards, they were candidates for Fang Ye's recruitment. After finalizing some cooperation matters, Fang Ye left Norman Osborne's company with the data on the human enhancement potion, feeling satisfied. Looking at Fang Ye's departing figure, Norman Osborne couldn't help but sigh with regret. If it weren't for the lack of time and his deteriorating health, and also for Harry's sake, Norman Osborne would never have cooperated with Fang Ye. The key was that Fang Ye was his major financial backer. The funding for his laboratory over the years amounted to trillions. Norman Osborne had invested almost all of his assets into the laboratory. Otherwise, he wouldn't have transferred 5% of Osborne Industries shares to Fang Ye for a mere $50 billion each year. The terrifying speed at which the laboratory burned money was something Fang Ye could understand too. After all, most of Fang Ye's assets were also spent on the laboratory. But the purpose of establishing the fund was to provide funding for the laboratory. As long as there were results, Fang Ye wouldn't hesitate to spend as much money as needed. Leaving Osborne Industries, on the way, many senior executives nodded respectfully to Fang Ye because they recognized him. After all, Fang Ye was one of the directors of Osborne Industries. The ordinary employees might not care, but the senior executives of Osborne Industries naturally knew their boss, Fang Ye. When Fang Ye arrived in the lobby of Osborne Industries, he unexpectedly saw someone. "You guys wait for me here." Stopping Deadpool and Jennifer from following, Fang Ye walked slowly toward a young man. "Peter Parker." Peter Parker was startled when he heard someone call his name. He must remember that he had infiltrated Osborne Industries, so it was surprising that someone recognized him. But when he turned around and saw it was Fang Ye, Peter Parker's face couldn't help but show excitement. "Mr. Fang Ye, it's an honor to meet you." At this point, Fang Ye was already quite well known, having been on the cover of Time magazine over a dozen times, so it wasn't surprising that Peter Parker recognized him. "Hehe, it seems you are indeed Peter Parker." Looking at Peter Parker in front of him, Fang Ye couldn't help but smile. He knew that in the near future, this young man would become the famous Spider-Man. Although Peter Parker was happy, he was also puzzled. How did Fang Ye know him? "Mr. Fang Ye, how do you know me? I have actually never met you before, but I came across your father's information in the Osborne Industries database by chance. After learning that your father went missing, I specially inquired about his whereabouts, so I know about you, which isn't surprising." Fang Ye's words were not flawless, but under Peter Parker's emotional excitement, how could he have any doubts? "Thank you, Mr. Fang Ye. All right, I won't disturb you anymore." Seeing Peter Parker feeling down, Fang Ye shook his head and didn't say much. In fact, meeting Peter Parker was just a coincidence and a momentary interest. Moreover, Peter Parker looked similar to the one in the movie, which caught Fang Ye's attention. But before leaving Osborne Industries, Fang Ye planned to take a few super spiders with him. Although the super spiders were an important research project of Osborne Industries, Fang Ye was after all a shareholder of the company, so it wasn't difficult to take a few super spiders. Fang Ye quietly instructed Jennifer a few times, and after she made a phone call, 3 super spiders were soon delivered. Fang Ye wanted to take the super spiders back for research purposes. As for fusing with the super spider genes, Fang Ye didn't even think about it. The process of fusing blood serum or genes had a very high failure rate. Fang Ye's limit for daring to take such a risk was 2 attempts. Trying it 3 or 4 times would be suicide. Who could guarantee that they would succeed every time? "Let's go." After taking one last look at Peter Parker, Fang Ye left with Deadpool and Jennifer. Chapter 16, Abducting Dr. Stern. After returning to Wall Street UI building, Fang Ye called Dr. Connors into his office. "Dr. Connors, this is the data of the human enhancement potion developed by Osborne Industries. Take it back and study it." Human Enhancement Potion. The Human Enhancement Potion was a core secret of Osborne Industries, and Dr. Connors naturally couldn't know about it. It was also the first time he had heard of the name Human Enhancement Potion. Seeing Dr. Connors looking puzzled, Fang Ye explained, the Human Enhancement Potion is something similar to the Super Soldier Serum, but just like the Super Soldier Serum, it also has fatal flaws. Super Soldier Serum. Dr. Connors' eyes lit up when he heard this. He had certainly heard of the name Super Soldier Serum. After all, the deeds of Captain America, Steve Rogers, were well known and widely publicized by the US government. He was the only person who successfully injected the Super Soldier Serum. Because of the injection of the Super Soldier Serum, Steve Rogers' physical abilities, such as strength, speed, and endurance, surpassed human limits. Now hearing that Osborne Industries had developed a potion similar to the Super Soldier Serum, Dr. Connors couldn't help but be interested. Then, Fang Ye took out a wooden box containing 3 super spiders. Here are 3 super spiders cultivated by Osborne Industries. You are a leading expert in arachnology worldwide. You might be interested in these 3 spiders. Take them and study them. Boss, thank you so much. Dr. Connors' face lit up with joy. He was indeed thrilled to receive the wooden box containing the super spiders. As Fang Ye had said, Dr. Connors was a top expert in the field of arachnology, and compared to the Human Enhancement Potion, he was more interested in the 3 super spiders. You may leave now. Fang Ye waved his hand, and the matter was explained. He had other things to attend to. Dr. Connors left cheerfully, eager to start studying the 3 super spiders. Everything is ready, all that's left is the east wind. Fang Ye sighed inwardly. Now that he had the Hulk's blood serum and the Human Enhancement Potion, the next step was to continuously refine both potions until they met Fang Ye's standards. A person's life was only given once, and Fang Ye valued his life more than anyone else. Before he had significant certainty, he wouldn't rashly attempt to fuse the 2 potions. The fusion of the Human Enhancement Potion might lead to failure, and one might develop a second personality that only sought destruction, as Norman Osborne did in the original work. But as long as one survived, there might still be hope for salvation. However, if the fusion of the Hulk's blood serum failed, there was absolutely no possibility of survival. The energy contained in the Hulk's blood serum was too terrifying. Even if the serum was diluted and processed in various ways to make it more suitable for human gene fusion, the energy it contained was still quite terrifying and far beyond what an ordinary human body could withstand. This was why, in the beginning, Fang Ye looked down on the Human Enhancement Potion, but now he was considering it. The idea was to inject the Human Enhancement Potion to enhance physical qualities before fusing with the Hulk's blood serum, to increase the chances of success during the fusion process. Dong dong dong! The sound of knocking interrupted Fang Ye's contemplation. Come in. Boss, this is the intelligence information just received from S.H.I.E.L.D. Jennifer, dressed professionally, with her beautiful hair flowing over her shoulders, her stunning figure, and her almond-shaped face adorned with light makeup, all combined to make it difficult for an ordinary man to resist her charms. Fang Ye glanced at her lightly, then patted the sofa beside him. Sit. Jennifer blushed slightly and lightly responded. Then she sat naturally beside Fang Ye, intimately holding his arm, while also pushing the information toward him. Fang Ye's attention, however, did not linger on Jennifer, but instead furrowed his brows as he perused the information. S.H.I.E.L.D. was a code name for one of Fang Ye's capable subordinates, responsible for gathering intelligence and collecting various information. Even some assassination activities were handled by S.H.I.E.L.D. secretly. Carleton University, military fighting with unidentified green creatures. The keywords Carleton University and green creatures immediately caught Fang Ye's attention. While others might not understand what the green creatures were, how could Fang Ye not know? Those green creatures were none other than the future world-famous and invincible Hulk. However, since the Hulk was already fighting the military, it meant that Dr. Stern would go to Dr. Connors soon. Dr. Stern was a professor of cell biology at Carleton University and an outstanding expert in gamma radiation research, making him one of the best in the world. Such talent must not be allowed to slip away. Fang Ye must persuade him to join his research team. Although Dr. Banner was also an expert in gamma radiation, Fang Ye never had the idea of recruiting him. Banner was like an unstable bomb, and Fang Ye would never attempt to recruit him. Who knew that if he succeeded in recruiting Banner, the Hulk might suddenly appear and destroy the research facility he had spent so much to establish. Putting down the intelligence information, Fang Ye made a call. Shillong, how is the situation over there? A low, hoarse voice came through the phone, and the gender of the speaker was hard to discern. Boss, I've been following Dr. Stern as you ordered recently. Last night, I even sent someone to infiltrate his lab. After listening to Shillong's report, Fang Ye fell into silence. Based on Shillong's report, Dr. Stern's research on the blood serum had reached a crucial point, and the completion of the serum was expected within the next 2 to 3 days. Now Fang Ye had two choices. The first was to immediately abduct Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. The second was to wait for Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. to complete the serum and then abduct him. The first option wasn't difficult. Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. was just an ordinary person, and abducting him posed no real challenge. The second option depended on luck. Both S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military were closely monitoring Dr. Banner now. If Dr. Banner went to find Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D., it would be nearly impossible for Fang Ye to abduct him without a trace. Fang Ye quickly made a decision. Compared to the serum, people were more important. As long as Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. was still alive, Fang Ye could continue his research on the serum. We're running out of time. Bring Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. to see me immediately. Also, remember to destroy those semi-finished serums. Understood. Fang Ye hung up the phone and let out a light sigh. Over the past 2 years, Fang Ye had cultivated his own power, mainly consisting of international mercenaries. S.H.I.E.L.D. was one of Fang Ye's trusted subordinates, a native of China, and also a mutant. However, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s strength was not remarkable. His ability was only invisibility. Chapter 17, Coercion and Temptation. At noon the next day, in the top floor office of UI building, Fang Ye was entertaining a guest. Fang Ye looked at the middle-aged man in front of him, who seemed visibly uneasy and restrained. This guest was none other than Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D., who had been forcibly invited. Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. was naturally nervous and uneasy, which was only natural. After all, anyone who suddenly gets abducted will feel similarly. Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D., I've heard so much about you. Today, I finally have the honor of meeting you in person. Fang Ye said with a smile. Mr. Fang Ye, you are. Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. clearly recognized Fang Ye. After all, in the federal United States, few people didn't know about Fang Ye, and Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. was obviously not one of them. Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D., you don't need to be nervous. I mean you no harm. Fang Ye smiled, trying to soothe Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s emotions. First of all, I apologize for inviting you here in this manner. I extend a solemn invitation to you to join my research team. Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D., I wonder if you would be willing to accept. Fang Ye didn't beat around the bush and directly stated his intentions. With his current status and position, there was no need for him to play any tricks. Numerous people in the world were eager to climb the tree of his power. If it weren't for Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s profound research in gamma radiation and his significant help in studying the Hulk's blood serum, Fang Ye wouldn't have valued him so highly. The key was that Fang Ye had watched the movies and knew that Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. was indeed talented. Even without top-notch equipment, he had independently developed a temporary antidote to suppress the green cells. It was clear evidence of Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s talent. Moreover, the appearance of the abomination could be said to be caused by Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s actions. If he hadn't secretly researched the blood serum while studying the antidote, the abomination might never have appeared. Things had changed too quickly, and Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. was somewhat at a loss. Don't rush to refuse. You can consider it carefully, and also listen to my conditions. Mr. Fang Ye, please go ahead. Taking a deep breath, Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. was intrigued by the invitation to join Fang Ye's research team. In the United States, everyone knew that joining Fang Ye's research team meant not having to worry about funding and being able to focus entirely on one's research. It was the dream of every scientist. Although Fang Ye hadn't said anything harsh, Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. knew better than to believe that refusing Fang Ye would lead to a safe departure. This is the contract, you can take a look. It includes your annual salary, benefits, bonuses. The only demanding condition is that you must work for me for 5 years. Seeing that Fang Ye had already prepared the contract, Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. couldn't help but sigh. However, he had no choice now. He had already understood that he had to agree today, whether he liked it or not. As he read the contents of the contract, Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. couldn't help but feel tempted. Fang Ye offered very generous terms, and the key was that Fang Ye's research facility promised to fully support his research. I agree. A very wise choice. Welcome to join us, Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. Fang Ye smiled. With Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. joining, the research on the Hulk's blood serum could be perfected in a shorter time. Fang Ye planned to assign Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. to focus on the research of the Hulk's blood serum, while Dr. Connors would continue to work on the human enhancement potion. The goal was to perfect both potions as quickly as possible. Fang Ye didn't aim for perfection because nothing in the world could be perfect. He only sought to increase the success rate of fusing the two potions to the maximum possible level. Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D., you'll have to put your own research on hold for now. I'm going to assign you to a new research project. Boss, please tell me, and I will give it my all. Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. was eager to prove himself after just joining Fang Ye's team. He wanted to show Fang Ye that his talent was worthy of the treatment he received. That project is something you've been researching all along, the Hulk's blood serum. We have it in our research facility, and we've already developed the serum, but it's not quite perfected. I want you to be in charge of improving the serum. Yes. Though Dr. S.H.I.E.L.D. was puzzled, He didn't dare ask further questions without Fang Ye providing more information. He trusted that Fang Ye would tell him what he needed to know. Fang Ye was pleased with Dr. Stern's tactfulness. He didn't need to explain everything, and there was no need for him to do so. Approaching his work desk, Fang Ye made a call. Dr. Connors, come to my office. Okay, boss. Moments later, Dr. Connors arrived at the office and smiled at Dr. Stern when he saw him. Introducing them to each other, Fang Ye said, Dr. Connors, this is Dr. Stern, your new assistant. Hello, Dr. Stern. Welcome to join us. Dr. Connors, it's an honor to cooperate with you. Dr. Connors couldn't help but give Dr. Stern an extra glance because he could see how much Fang Ye valued him. Since the establishment of the research facility, Fang Ye had recruited many talents, but there were only two people he truly valued, Dr. Stern and Dr. William. Even Dr. Connors hadn't received as much attention from Fang Ye. The reason Fang Ye valued the two of them was that his future plans depended on them. Dr. William was an expert in space research, and if Fang Ye's plans went smoothly and he obtained the Tesseract, he would need Dr. William to open a space-time tunnel using the Tesseract. As for Dr. Stern, Fang Ye valued his talent. Even without top-notch equipment, Dr. Stern had independently developed an antidote to suppress the green cells and even researched the Hulk's blood serum. Fang Ye believed that as long as he provided him with a good platform, Dr. Stern could undoubtedly improve the Hulk's blood serum, surpassing the one in the original work. After all, Fang Ye's research facility was equipped with world-class instruments and equipment. After introducing them, Fang Ye gave instructions. Dr. Connors, take Dr. Stern to visit the research facility. Also, hand over the research project of the Hulk's blood serum to Dr. Stern. From now on, Dr. Stern will be in charge of the research on the Hulk's blood serum. Yes. Dr. Connors didn't resent Dr. Stern for taking over the project. He was relieved because the research on the Hulk's blood serum required extensive knowledge of gamma radiation, which Dr. Connors wasn't an expert in. Although there were several gamma radiation experts in the research facility, they were good but far from being considered top authorities in the field. With Dr. Stern joining the team, he could share the workload with Dr. Connors, which made him quite happy. As they were about to leave, Fang Ye said, as for the human enhancement potion, Dr. Connors, you'll continue to be in charge of it. I expect you to show me results as soon as possible. I don't need to know the process, I only need to know the outcome, understand? Yes. Both of them were solemn, as they could sense the unquestionable tone in Fang Ye's words. Go ahead. Fang Ye waved his hand without lifting his head. Now, it's time to focus on the human enhancement potion. When will the problems be solved? Norman Osborne had been pondering over the flaws in the human enhancement potion for the past 2 years, but he still hadn't found a solution. Even though the two research teams were working together, Fang Ye still didn't have much confidence in solving the issues quickly. Norman Osborne was a smart man, and Fang Ye never doubted his intelligence. However, that was why Fang Ye was cautious. Chapter 18, Live Experiment. Dr. Stern's expertise in gamma radiation proved to be invaluable to the research on the Hulk's blood serum. After he joined the research facility, the progress in developing the serum accelerated several times. In just 3 days, the success rate of serum fusion increased by 1%. However, what troubled Fang Ye was that there was no significant progress in the development of the human enhancement potion. In these 3 days, no breakthroughs had been made. Fang Ye had already mentally prepared for this situation. Even though his research facility was powerful, he knew that he couldn't solve the fatal flaw of the human enhancement potion in just 3 days, something that Norman Osborne had struggled with for 2 years. In the underground research facility, in the research center room, the development of the human enhancement potion hasn't made any progress, has it? Looking at Dr. Connors beside him, Fang Ye asked calmly. Dr. Connors felt a chill in his heart. The calmer Fang Ye appeared on the surface, the more anxious he felt inside. After all, he had promised confidently in the beginning, but now there was no progress in the research. Boss, the development of the human enhancement potion has reached a bottleneck, and it's impossible to make any breakthroughs in a short time. Though anxious, Dr. Connors honestly replied. Fang Ye fell silent upon hearing this. He knew he couldn't blame Dr. Connors, considering even Norman Osborne hadn't solved the flaw in the human enhancement potion in 2 years. However, Fang Ye had invested trillions of dollars in establishing the research facility. Was this the result he was getting? Without the human enhancement potion, the probability of successfully fusing the Hulk's blood serum was too low. Though Fang Ye was willing to sacrifice everything to return to the real world, it didn't mean he would blindly put himself in danger. At the very least, he needed to see some hope before he took the risk. Taking a deep breath, he suppressed his anger. Isn't there any other way? Well, there is, but... Dr. Connors hesitated to speak, looking like he wanted to say something but didn't dare. What method? Dr. Connors' unexpected reply surprised Fang Ye. He had only asked casually, but he didn't expect that Dr. Connors would indeed have a solution. Unless we conduct live experiments. Fang Ye fell silent again. Conducting live experiments, whether in the real world or the Marvel world, was considered taboo. Most people wouldn't want to get involved in such practices. But now, Fang Ye was so desperate to improve the human enhancement potion that he didn't care about that anymore. He had no sentimental attachments in this world. Even if he was discovered conducting live experiments, as long as he could return to the real world, he was willing to abandon everything here. Live experiments it is, then. The Marvel world is full of criminals anyway. It seems I'll have to negotiate with the military. Fang Ye thought to himself. Wait for my message. Leaving these words behind, Fang Ye left the research center room. After returning to his office, Fang Ye made a call. The call was not only on a dedicated line but also encrypted, so he didn't need to worry about the conversation being leaked. Hello. Once the call connected, a deep voice came through. It's me, General William. I'm surprised you called me, Fang Ye. Hehe. Fang Ye chuckled lightly. The person he was addressing as General William was none other than William Stryker. This name might not be familiar to ordinary people, but in the world of mutants, William Stryker was a taboo. William Stryker once had a happy family, a beloved wife, and a lively and lovely son. He thought his life would be spent in such bliss. But one day, his son turned into a mutant. What was even more terrifying was that his son's ability was to create illusions and use them to drive his own mother insane. Unable to bear the torment of illusions, his wife ultimately chose to commit suicide. Since then, William Stryker developed a strong hatred for mutants. He relentlessly hunted mutants and conducted inhumane live experiments on them. In the eyes of mutants, if there were a list of the most hated people, William Stryker would undoubtedly top it, and there would be no dispute about that. However, coincidentally, William Stryker was a member of UEI Foundation and even a prestigious silver member. So, it wasn't strange that Fang Ye had William Stryker's contact information. General William, I'd like to make a deal with you. Oh? What kind of deal? General William, I know about your research facility. I understand that funds are tight for you at the moment. Luckily, I happen to need some criminals. If you provide them to me, I'll offer you funding. What do you think of this proposal? Sure. William Stryker fell silent for a moment before agreeing readily. He didn't care about what Fang Ye wanted the criminals for. Even if it involved conducting live experiments, he didn't care. As long as he got a considerable sum of money, that was enough. Regarding live experiments, he was an expert in this field. Countless mutants had died on his operating table. After finalizing the deal, Fang Ye chatted with William Stryker for a while before hanging up. After ending the call, Fang Ye couldn't help but smile. I thought I was going to be ripped off, but William Stryker agreed so readily. It seems his funds are really tight these days. Fang Ye neither liked nor disliked William Stryker. As long as William Stryker didn't affect his interests, he didn't care about what he did. After all, he didn't possess a saintly attribute. If it didn't affect his plans, he wouldn't bother meddling in others' affairs. Dealing with the criminals is taken care of. Next is to conduct human experiments. However, human experiments were only for testing the human enhancement potion. Fang Ye had no intention of using live experiments for the Hulk's blood serum. Who knew what abomination might be created if he was careless? As for the human enhancement potion, as long as safety measures were in place, in case of any accidents, the test subject could be killed instantly. Though the enhanced individuals had physical qualities surpassing ordinary people, they were not invulnerable. The underground research facility was equipped with laser devices that could disintegrate the test subject in an instant. Trillions of dollars had been invested, and it wasn't merely for top-notch equipment. Fang Ye's research facility had top-level equipment, and its defense measures were also world-class. To ensure the safety of the research facility, Fang Ye had spent a significant amount of money to purchase some top-level technology from Stark Industries, one of which was the laser device. However, similar technology like the laser device was still not very mature at present, and Stark Industries didn't sell it externally. If it weren't for Fang Ye being a shareholder in Stark Industries and having a good relationship with Tony Stark, as well as making some concessions to other shareholders, he wouldn't have been able to obtain such top-level technology. Afterward, Fang Ye made another call to notify Dr. Connors to prepare for live experiments. Chapter 19, Research Achievement of Space-Moving Device. William Stryker did not disappoint Fang Ye. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, he secretly transported 50 criminals to the UEI building in batches. Among the 50 criminals, there were more men and fewer women. The oldest of them were around 30 years old. They were all serious criminals, and more than half of them had committed murder. The reason for controlling their age between 18 and 30 was that, as test subjects, they needed to be physically strong. Those too young or too old would not be suitable. To protect the safety of the doctors who only knew about research and had no fighting capabilities, Fang Ye specially ordered 20 mercenaries to be called over. With 20 armed mercenaries present, Fang Ye wasn't afraid of any trouble the 50 criminals might cause. Boss, the people have all been escorted to the detention room. You 20 split into 2 teams and take turns to guard them day and night. Execute anyone who dares to cause trouble. Fang Ye's tone was cold, and he didn't care about human lives at all. Such indifference towards life made even battle-hardened mercenaries feel a chill in their hearts. Yes, go about your business. Fang Ye waved his hand, and the mercenaries quickly left. With the 50 criminals settled, Fang Ye turned to Dr. Connors by his side. Dr. Connors, the test subjects are ready. It's up to you next. Don't disappoint me again. Boss, I absolutely won't disappoint you this time. Dr. Connors' expression was slightly embarrassed. He had promised confidently last time, but he ended up disappointing Fang Ye. But this time, with the opportunity to conduct human experiments, Dr. Connors was confident he could break through the bottleneck. Even if he couldn't completely perfect the human enhancement potion, he was confident in solving the defect of personality splitting. I'll send you a batch of criminals every day from now on. Each batch will be about 10 people. You just focus on your human experiments and don't worry about the life or death of the test subjects. If, under such excellent conditions, you still can't perfect the human enhancement potion, then you might have to step down from your position as the head of the genetics department. Fang Ye's tone was low, gentle but imposing. Yes. Dr. Connors felt a chill in his heart, knowing that Fang Ye had lost patience with him. If he couldn't perfect the human enhancement potion, he could already foresee his fate. Fang Ye gave Dr. Connors one last look before turning to leave the underground research room. But just as he reached the door, he encountered Dr. William, who was rushing over with a delighted expression. Boss, I have something to report to you. Perhaps because he was in a hurry, Dr. William's speech was a bit breathless. Fang Ye valued Dr. William and had always treated him with respect. Seeing him like this, Fang Ye couldn't help but smile. Take your time. No need to rush. Boss, we have made progress in the research of the space-moving device. Upon hearing this, Fang Ye's expression trembled, and a hint of joy appeared on his face. The space-moving device was an excellent thing. Deadpool could teleport because of the space-moving device. If he had a space-moving device, not only would Fang Ye's safety be greatly enhanced, but just the thought of a teleporting Hulk was terrifying. This was the main reason why Fang Ye attached great importance to the space-moving device. He was planning for the future. After all, if he salvaged the cosmic cube in the future, he would face many enemies. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he would have enemies all over the world. You've duplicated the space-moving device? That's absolutely impossible. Before Fang Ye could speak, Deadpool, who was behind him, exclaimed. Because Deadpool knew more about the space-moving device than anyone else. Currently, Earth's technological level definitely couldn't produce a space-moving device. It's worth mentioning that since Deadpool agreed to become Fang Ye's bodyguard, he had been following Fang Ye like a shadow, never leaving his side except when sleeping. Let Dr. William finish. Deadpool wanted to continue questioning, but Fang Ye stopped him with a gesture. Dr. William wasn't angry because of Deadpool's unreasonable attitude. He didn't even glance at Deadpool and excitedly reported his research results. After Dr. William discovered the existence of the energy circulation matrix of the space-moving device and grasped its basic operating principles through his research in recent days, Fang Ye, who was not a professional in this field, only vaguely understood what he was saying. As for the matrix mentioned by Dr. William, it was a dynamic and balanced circulating system. For example, the human body can be considered a matrix, Earth can be likened to a matrix, and even the entire universe can be regarded as a matrix. Listening to Dr. William's words, Fang Ye somewhat understood but not entirely. However, what he could be sure of was that Dr. William had made great breakthroughs in his research, and there was a good chance of duplicating the space-moving device. But Dr. William's next words made Fang Ye's heart sink. The core of the energy circulation matrix, after my research these days, I've basically grasped its operating principles. Unfortunately, I found that the core of the matrix is made of an unknown and mysterious metal, unlike any known metal on Earth. If we had this metal, I might be able to attempt to duplicate the space-moving device, but no one knows if such a metal exists on Earth. Can't any other metal replace it? Fang Ye frowned and asked unwillingly. No, none of the known metals on Earth are suitable as the core material for the matrix. Dr. William sighed. He was not only unwilling, but he was also dissatisfied. Dr. William, continue your research on the space-moving device. As for the core metal of the matrix, I'll find a way to search for it. Suddenly, Fang Ye remembered something. In the near future, Dr. William would be controlled by Loki, the evil god, and he would open the space portal using a certain metal. Perhaps that metal could replace the core metal of the matrix. After all, that metal could even open space portals. Why couldn't it serve as the core material for a space-moving device? You guys keep doing what you're doing. Wilson, we're going back. Before leaving, Deadpool turned back, casting another glance at Dr. William. Deadpool was surprised that Dr. William could discover the existence of the energy circulation matrix and even grasp its basic operating principles. This was truly beyond Deadpool's expectations. If it weren't for the lack of core material, Dr. William might really be able to duplicate the space-moving device. After returning to his office, Fang Ye made a call. Find out about Heinrich Zima and check if he has a special metal material. Yes. After hanging up the phone, Fang Ye pondered. He only remembered this name, Heinrich Zima, but didn't know anything else about him. After all, in the original work, Heinrich Zima appeared as a minor character, and who would remember the information of a minor character? Chapter 20, Spy or Agent. After finishing all the work, it was already past 4 in the morning, and Fang Ye didn't plan to go back to the villa. He decided to rest in his office instead. However, just as Fang Ye lay down, before he could close his eyes, he felt a sense of crisis. Could something bad be about to happen? Fang Ye never doubted his precognitive ability, and he immediately sat up from the sofa, calmly lit a cigarette for himself. Taking a deep drag of the cigarette, Fang Ye's spirit was slightly refreshed, and his drowsiness diminished. Wilson. Boss, aren't you going to sleep? A figure appeared instantly. It wasn't teleportation, but Deadpool's speed was just too fast. Fang Ye rubbed his temples and flicked the cigarette ash. There might be something happening. Go find Dr. William and get back your belt and weapons. Okay. Deadpool knew about Fang Ye's ability, similar to precognition, so he didn't dare to neglect Fang Ye's words. After Deadpool left, Fang Ye poured himself a glass of wine. He was seemingly careless because he didn't feel threatened. However, since he had a sense of crisis, something unfavorable to him was bound to occur. So, Fang Ye sent Deadpool to the research room to retrieve his belt and weapons. Besides his immortality, Deadpool relied heavily on the teleportation belt and 2 incredibly sharp, adamantium-made blades. In his prime state, Deadpool's strength might not be top tier in the Marvel world, but it was not to be underestimated. At least protecting Fang Ye's safety was absolutely no problem. A moment later, Deadpool returned fully armed. Boss, I'm back. Deadpool seemed restless and excited. He could already see a myriad of dollars coming his way. According to the contract, if someone tried to assassinate Fang Ye, Deadpool would earn $1 million for each assassin he eliminated. Boss, don't forget my bonus later. During his time as Fang Ye's bodyguard, Deadpool had been eagerly waiting for an opportunity to face assassins. Now he finally had the chance. However, Deadpool couldn't stand Fang Ye's habit of deducting his bonus for any small mistakes. Don't worry, your bonus won't be less. Fang Ye was both amused and exasperated. He had never seen a bodyguard so eager for his boss to be assassinated. Fang Ye waved his hand, and Deadpool left the office. Now, time to rest for a while. There are some things I need to deal with tomorrow. Once again, Deadpool's figure disappeared, using his teleportation device. Fang Ye sat back on the sofa, poured another glass of wine, and lit another cigarette. Having stayed up all night without sleep, Fang Ye was feeling a bit tired. It seems like I've attracted quite a bit of attention recently. Fang Ye felt somewhat helpless. The individuals after Heim were definitely not just spies but possibly agents as well. This was the situation he least wanted to see. Unfortunately, his recent actions had drawn attention from various forces. Intercepting the Hulk's blood serum on the way and then collaborating with Norman Osborne to develop human enhancement potions, both of these drew the interest of many people. Many wanted to obtain these 2 kinds of potions. While Fang Ye believed his actions were discreet, he was in the United States, and organizations like S.H.I.E.L.D. had the capability to uncover hidden secrets, even if it might take some time. Fang Ye didn't expect to completely hide from these forces, but he didn't anticipate them to notice him so quickly. It seems I need to expedite the completion of both potions. Fang Ye didn't want to become a pawn for others. With his current identity and status, these forces couldn't do anything to him at the moment. His only option was to delay them as much as possible. If it came to the point where he couldn't protect the 2 blood serum potions, Fang Ye would rather destroy them than let others benefit from his work. However, the security of UEI building seemed inadequate. It allowed so many people to infiltrate so easily. I should contact Tony. Fang Ye had been trying to get JARVIS, Tony Stark's AI butler and intelligent program, for a while now, but Tony refused to sell J.A.R.V.I.S as subsystem to him, no matter how much money Fang Ye offered. With an intelligent program like JARVIS, the defense of UEI building would immediately be strengthened significantly. After about 5 minutes, Deadpool appeared in the office again. Boss, I've basically subdued those people. However, one of them escaped unexpectedly. I didn't expect him to have spatial teleportation abilities. Deadpool looked somewhat embarrassed. He had just promised to catch all of them, and yet one slipped away. I leave those people to you. You've been a mercenary and an assassin, I believe your interrogation skills are top-notch. Make them talk, and your bonus will be doubled. No problem. Hearing the promise of doubled bonuses, Deadpool beamed with joy. Fang Ye waved his hand, lay back on the sofa, and said, "Go ahead and handle it. I'll rest for a while, there are some things I need to deal with tomorrow." Deadpool's figure flashed, and he used his teleportation device to leave the office again. Can someone spatially teleport? It's likely a mutant. I wonder which mutant faction is targeting me, Professor X or Magneto's Brotherhood. Thinking of Professor X's telepathic abilities, Fang Ye couldn't help but feel a headache. That guy's powers were too freakish. Fang Ye believed he could hide from other forces, but he was sure that Professor X would be able to detect him. Perhaps Professor X knew even what Fang Ye was researching and working on, regardless of how secretive Fang Ye thought he was. As Fang Ye lay on the sofa, he began to doze off. The next morning, a ray of sunlight shone through the window and fell on Fang Ye's face. "Boss, you're awake." Jennifer was already at work and saw Fang Ye waking up. She picked up a wet towel she had prepared earlier and wiped his face. "What time is it now?" "It's already 8:30. After getting up, Fang Ye straightened his clothes and stretched lazily. "Go make me a cup of Longjing tea." "Sure." Jennifer obediently replied and went to make a cup of tea for Fang Ye. After drinking the tea, Fang Ye felt much more refreshed. Unlike many foreigners who preferred coffee, Fang Ye still preferred tea. Putting down the teacup, Fang Ye looked at Jennifer. "Jennifer, contact Tony Stark for me. A/N, consider giving some power stones for this novel. Your support is my motivation."